Free Speech TV is in their fund drive right now, their fundraising drive, and so it would be a great time for you to call 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669. And of course, you can go to the Free Speech TV website and donate there as well. Please be sure to mention the show. There are a lot of great goodies that Free Speech TV is offering right now as part of the funds drive, and in fact, there's quite a few. But the important thing is to call 877-378-8669. Here's some information on one of the things that you can get. With a $20 contribution, and $20 may not sound like a lot of money, but you know, to Free Speech TV, actually it is. This is an entire television network that runs on a little tiny budget. With a $20 contribution, you get a Free Speech TV sticker, 3x8 clear window with a logo of Free Speech TV. Please call now. Thanks so much for supporting Free Speech TV. There literally, it's about 2% of you, as best we can tell, between 1% and 2%, who every pledge drive or every other pledge drive or maybe every third pledge drive call up and make a contribution. And 98% of you don't, ever. And so I want to start out by saying thank you to that small percentage who do. This is not uncommon. You know, in public radio, it's, 4 or 5% of people, contribute. We need to get that number up, though, And so there's two things. Number one, if you've never given to Free Speech TV before, if you've never contributed to Free Speech before, or if you haven't in the last year, please call now. Please consider making a contribution. $20 makes a big difference, actually. It doesn't need to be a $1,000 gift or a $5,000 gift. $20. If a lot of people give $20, and there are a lot of people watching right now, then we have a much better chance of keeping this network on the air, keeping this show on the air. It's important stuff. Free Speech TV really needs your help. And, supporting Free Speech TV and supporting our program as well is just, it's really important. I don't know how to say it beyond that. This network is doing extraordinary work. Somebody was tweeting about it just this morning. I love Free Speech TV. It's not beholden to any industries. And it's true. There's, CNN, MSNBC, other networks, they're afraid of offending their advertisers. They don't want to speak ill of the oil industry or the, fill in the blank, right? And Free Speech TV, we don't want to speak ill of our donors. Well, that's not a problem. I love our donors. So anyway, it's critical that we keep this network going, and we can only do it with your help. The number is 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669. Please call now and make a contribution to keep Free Speech TV going. With a $20 gift, you get a Free Speech TV window sticker. It's 3x8. It's clear with the logo and Free Speech TV, and I'm guessing this is one of those clingy ones rather than one of the sticky ones, but I'm not sure, so you might want to inquire when you call. With the $60 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Tag You're It coffee mug. This is a ceramic mug. It's a real nice, high-quality mug with a picture of me on it and Tag You're It. With a $72 gift, you get the new 2018 edition, the third edition of, I think this is frankly, the most important book I've written. This and Walking Your Blues Away, I think, are probably the two most important books I've written. And it's The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, The Fate of the World and What We Can Do Before It's Too Late. And it's really a story about how our dysfunctional culture has inevitably, it was predictable 10,000 years ago that this kind of a culture organized along these hierarchical, patriarchal, ignore the planet and, consumption-based lines, this culture that basically emerged out of the Middle East around somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 years ago following the agricultural revolution, that culture, which has now spread all over the world, will end up destroying the world if we don't regulate it or control it or understand it or awaken from it. And so really most of the book is about culture, but the specific thing that is the last hours of ancient sunlight, the specific thing that's ancient sunlight is fossil fuels. That's sunlight that was captured hundreds of millions of years ago and, by plants, and then the plant matter was stored in the earth as carbon. Carbon is the storage system for that sunlight. And then when that carbon comes out, we burn that carbon. We burn natural gas, oil, coal, and we liberate that carbon back into the atmosphere. So we updated it. I updated the book over the last year and a half or so to include all the latest information on climate change. So it's a really solid book. That's a $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt and the sticker. With a $240 gift, Louise and I are putting together a personal growth NLP webinar. It'll be a live event that we'll hold on the internet that will only be open to people who are $240 donors at Free Speech TV. That's it. It's the only way to get it. And we're going to be talking about the various ways that you can use neuro-linguistic programming NLP to improve your communications, to improve the way that you, family, friends, relationships, all these things. It all has to do with how we communicate. With a $360 gift, you get 5 books: The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, the Thom Hartmann Reader, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy by Greg Palast, and Rebooting the American Dream by me. And with a $480 gift, you get all 5 books, plus the t-shirt, plus the sticker, plus the coffee mug. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and I'll buy you lunch. You can hang out the last hour of the show here and see how we do it. We work electronic magic in a very small space, and it works out pretty well. So those are the premiums, but the important thing is to keep this network going. We have to keep this network going. And your help, your support, is the difference between Free Speech TV literally existing or not existing. Call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
One, two, three. There we go. Okay. My microphone wire had come loose. Hey, greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you live from Portland, Oregon. And as George Herbert Walker Bush is being laid to rest, our first hour today is Middays with Mark. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls at 202-808-9925. Congressman Pocan is the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and represents the great state of Wisconsin, the 2nd District of Wisconsin. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me.
It is always a pleasure to have you here with us. What the heck is going on in Michigan and Wisconsin right now? It's just this looks nuts.
Yeah, it's very third world dictatorship. So in Wisconsin and Michigan, Democrats won the governorship. Republicans have greatly gerrymandered legislatures in both states, so they're deciding to try to take away powers from the incoming governor, and at least in Wisconsin, the incoming attorney general's office, as they're going into the new swearing in January. So they're trying to usurp the voters' decisions on November 6th and during the holiday season steal from the people and give to the Republican lawmakers. And they passed a bunch of provisions that took away the governor's powers, took away the attorney general's powers, made it harder to do early voting, and a whole bunch of other things in an action that literally late Friday the text came out. They had a public hearing on Monday in Wisconsin. This is great. It was, what was the exact number? 1,420 against, 6 for information only, no one for the bill, and no one testified for the bill that they put out there. Mm-hmm. And then they voted on throughout the night and this morning in Wisconsin to move this forward. So a bunch of bad ideas with no public scrutiny whatsoever passed just so they could try to give power to Republican politicians because the voters decided they liked Democrats better.
That's amazing. And in fact, in Wisconsin, I know for a fact that your House, that Wisconsin voters overwhelmingly, well over 50% voted for Democrats for the Wisconsin House of Representatives. Yet it's controlled by the Republicans because of gerrymandering. I'm assuming the same is true in Michigan?
Yeah, same is true in Michigan. Wisconsin numbers, I know, 53 to 54% of the people voted for Democrats for the state assembly, for example, and we only got 36% of the seats. So there is a case at the Supreme Court right now. We're hoping that will help to fix the gerrymandering. But, this is why, we need to fix gerrymandering laws around the country because they have unbelievable consequences.
Yeah, remarkable. Okay, there was one last thing I wanted to bring up with you. No Labels. No Labels was this group that rolled out, a few years back and saying, we're going to be transpartisan or nonpartisan or above partisanship, and we're just trying to make people work together. And whenever I hear that, I get suspicious. Tell me what happened.
Yeah, so, 6 years ago, I think just about exactly this week, as a freshman member of Congress coming into Congress, we had a training at Harvard, and they did a presentation about how we need to work across the aisle to get things done. Nothing about centrist corporate crap at all. It was about how to work across the partisan divide, and that, of course, makes a lot of sense for those of us who served in legislatures and others. Often you have split government, you have to work together. But very quickly, it devolved by the issues they run on. They were talking about, things like cutting back on Social Security increases and a bunch of other centrist corporate ideas. Then they started getting involved in elections, and they endorsed against Senator Udall in Colorado, which they never told us they were going to do. And then I guess I made the ultimate sin with the organization is I asked where their funding came from, and I was told I'd be quietly taken off the list, in which I replied, I don't do anything quietly. So it's a bunch of dark, ugly money, and all of a sudden this session, after never asking to change the rules under Paul Ryan or John Boehner, suddenly they wanted to risk Nancy Pelosi's speakership over a bunch of rules that make it easier to have corporate-friendly legislation. So I decided it was time to write this. A bunch of other folks are now exposing them as well. But as a member, I wanted to expose them as someone who, it is right to try to work with people across the aisle on things you can agree on. But that's not what this group is about. This group is about making sure that, the special interests on K Street have even more access and power than they already have.
Remarkable. Okay, let's pick up some phone calls here. Jeff in San Francisco. Hey, Jeff, what's up? You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Okay, just a second. About that. I just want to ask about the Postal Service and the push to try to privatize it.
Okay.
Hello?
Yep.
Yeah.
And how it's got an 80% approval rating right now, and we can really work this in our Green New Deal that Ocasio-Cortez is pushing, and we could have all electrical vehicles, solar panels on these, and it'd be a great start since we have such great approval rating with the Postal Service right now.
The Postal Service has a high approval rating, not the idea of privatizing it. And in fact, it was when they announced back 12 years ago that they were going to buy electric vehicles, and it would be the largest fleet of electric vehicles in the United States. That was when the Republicans passed this law saying that every year the post office has to set aside $5 billion for people 75 years from now when they retire. Thank you, Jeff, for the question. Congressman?
Yeah, so, there have been attempts over my 6 years here to try to really privatize the Postal Service through little baby steps. 5-day delivery, not 6, not to-your-door delivery, a bunch of other measures. Largely, it was Darrell Issa, who now is no longer in Congress. So I think the lead advocate for the privatization is gone. There certainly are still advocates in Congress, but I think you point out something, that's really important. I mean, it has a very high approval rate. We all count on the Postal Service. In the rural parts of my district, they tell me if they don't have a post office and they don't have broadband, they're not in business. So it's a crucial importance across the country. And I think now that we're in charge, I'm not worried about any efforts to privatize it. In fact, now maybe we can fix this pre-funding of their benefits 75 years into the future. The only agency that's required to do it at the federal level is the Postal Service, and that's why on the books it looks a little lopsided. So, Jeff, your point is well taken. The Postal Service is a great service. We need to protect it in every possible way, and I think we're in a much better position to do that with the new majority.
Lewis in Chicago, Illinois. You are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, good morning. Congressman Pocan, which districts in Wisconsin are gerrymandered, and what's so unusual about them that makes you think they're gerrymandered?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the two best examples I can give 2 years ago, because I don't have the stat yet for this year on this one, 100,000 more people voted for Democrats for Congress in Wisconsin than Republicans, but Republicans got 5 of the 8 seats. State legislatively this session, 53 or 54% of the people voted for Democrats on the ballot for the state assembly, and yet they only got 36% of the seats. So clearly, the districts are askew when you have that kind of an off from the amount of people voting for a certain party and the number of seats they're getting. And we just know it from the last process. We saw how they drew the maps, and they're not like normal maps. They're done in very odd and strange ways to maintain power for the Republicans. And quite honestly, in other states we have Democrats doing this, but far more states we've seen the Republicans do this.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's like the Yankees play the Braves, and the Yankees, and the score is 12-10 to the Yankees, but the Braves officially won. It's weird.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Richard in Evanston, Illinois. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Oh, hi. I was this general feeling about this gerrymandering as well as this latest move in Wisconsin. Do you feel the Democratic Party is doing enough to publicize this? Shouldn't the Democratic National Committee be flooding your state and Michigan with well-done ads to point out what these fascists are doing? It seems to me that the entire story of gerrymandering and voter suppression has been underplayed generally, and I put part of the blame on the Democratic Party for not, really putting a spotlight on it. And here's a golden opportunity right before Christmas. I just wonder what's going to be done.
So, Richard, from my perspective, every 10 years we redraw lines, right? So you're going to have a period where it's not as relevant. We still have talked about it, but, it's coming up again. Now that we've elected a Democratic governor during his 4-year term, we'll be doing redistricting, which is part of why they're responding, because they're not going to be able to fix the lines in the same way. But, honestly, Eric Holder and Barack Obama have been very outspoken and nationally trying to do a lot around this with Democrats around the country. It's just the timing isn't quite yet where we're redistricting. So we're talking about it. This is a great example of the abuses of it. But also the way they did this so fast, it was hard to have time to do ads. Language on a Friday, public hearing Monday, vote Tuesday. It happened very quickly.
Yeah. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us. It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program. He's taking your calls for the hour. We'll be back with more of Congressman Pocan in just a moment. His website, pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's Middays with Mark. Congressman Pocan is also the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And welcome back. Jesse in Miami Beach, or in Miami, Florida, excuse me. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, hi. Mr. Pocan, what's your reference of what you think money is? In other words, a lot of people think money is gold, printed paper, or even Bitcoin. What do you think money is? That's basically the question.
I'm sure, Jesse, there's a more theoretical question I should answer to it, but, to me, especially as someone who sits on appropriations, money is the actual dollars that we have, that we spend as a government and as a society. So often our values are best stated by where we put our money, whether it's education or defense, are two very different places. So, to me, money is the resources that we have as a country through our tax dollars to spend.
Tyrone in Laguna Beach, California. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi. Last night I was watching Lawrence O'Donnell, and Jerry Nadler announced he would introduce legislation to extend the statute of limitations on presidential crimes in order to avoid an impeachment. I was wondering, what do you think? Do you think the American people deserve a full-blown hearing rather than having Trump just simply disappear? What do you think of that?
Yeah, Tyrone, I mean, absolutely. No one is above the law, whether you're the president or, a lunch lady at a cafeteria in school. We all have to be treated equally. And, Donald Trump is doing his best to delay many things. He's had no oversight whatsoever for the last 2 years by the Republicans in Congress. We're finally going to do our jobs, but I think Jerry Nadler's suggestion is a good one because no one should be above the law.
Yeah, we already know many of the crimes he has committed. I mean, the campaign finance, for example, paying off Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal specifically in order to influence the election. Michael Cohen has testified that he did this at the request of Trump, and then he provided the tape of it, of Trump saying, yeah, go do it. Had you done that, there's no doubt in my mind that Paul Ryan and the Republicans in Wisconsin and Scott Walker would have had you in jail the next day, sir.
Yeah. No, I think oversight is one of the crucial elements. Paul Ryan did nothing for oversight with this administration. One of the many bad marks on his failed speakership, not only do we not get anything done other than a tax bill for the wealthiest donors in this country and members of Mar-a-Lago, that's it. That's all we got done and provided no oversight. So it's finally time. We're going to do that, from taxes to illegalities to the Mueller investigation. But it's appropriate and high time we do it.
Yeah. We just have 36 seconds. What's your sense of how the how whether or not it's possible for a prosecutor to hold the president to account legally, or whether they have to wait until he leaves office? I realize it's never been adjudicated.
Yeah, this has been an administration of firsts, right? We don't know on many fronts, but I have confidence that we will ultimately get a fair resolution as we need to. It's just it may be more work given how this president operates.
Yeah, and he's operating in a very, very bizarre fashion. And the Flynn indictment last night was absolutely fascinating, and what it said and what it didn't say. It was absolutely fascinating. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. We'll be right back with more of Middays with Mark here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Welcome back. 21 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us. Middays with Mark. And we have callers from Louisiana, Washington, California, Michigan, North Carolina, California, Nevada, Andy in Belmont, Michigan. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, gentlemen. Hey, Congressman, since our governor has just been reelected, not reelected, since we have a new governor's trying to ram that line through underneath the straits, that line 5. He's going to put it through with a underneath the straits with a pipe to put the pipe into, because our elected governor, she decided she does not want to do that. We're going to have him pull it. I just want to know what your opinion is on that line 5, and did they ask you, the Wisconsin legislature, anything about putting that pipeline back in there underneath that pipe?
It's a pipeline through the Straits of Mackinac, right?
Yeah, Pipeline 5.
Yeah, Congressman.
Yeah, Andy, I don't know much about the Michigan. I quite honestly, yesterday before I left to come to Washington, I stopped to visit my friends at the Capitol that were going to be dealing with all this. I think from what I understand is the same thing is happening in Michigan, although you guys are even doing more policy. We did more around taking away powers of the governor and attorney general. You guys are doing last-minute policy items trying to usurp the voters' will. So I sorry I don't have a more definite answer because I've been busy following Wisconsin the closest.
Pam in Ammett, Louisiana. Am I saying that right, Pam?
Yes, you are.
You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, Pam.
I have been following the proceedings of Robert Mueller and the NEAT. I'm a member of the NEAT to Impeach program, but I just wanted to say I don't think we're going to need that. I think the president will be in there making deals with Robert Mueller to save his son and his son-in-law, and we won't need to impeach. I think he'll resign.
We'll see, Pam. I'll tell you, I'm just glad that we've been able to preserve this very thorough review that Robert Mueller's doing. The fact that already in less than 2 years has, I think, close to 40, or maybe it's over 40 now, indictments. it's been very efficient. Don't forget, we spent 4 years on Benghazi with 0 indictments, 2 years on Hillary Clinton's emails with 0 indictments. This is a functioning process, and we need to make sure it continues. We're going to have to continue to do that, but, come January 3rd, I think you've got the cavalry coming in. So let's see this to its completion.
Is it Lewis or Luis in Salisbury, North Carolina?
Lewis.
Hey, Lewis, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Oh, thank you so much. And how you doing, Tom?
Good.
Congressman, I live here in North Carolina, and I'm sure you understand the same thing is happening, similar, I guess, what's going on in Wisconsin. Could you tell me if there's any difference in what Wisconsin doing, trying to do to their governor, like what North Carolina is trying to do to their governor, and is this a trend that Republicans are trying to do to undermine our democracy? And one other thing, and you also stated that there was some Democrats that was doing some kind of like gerrymandering or anything of that nature. Could you tell us who that might have been?
Sure. So to that last part, just because it's fresh in mind, I think, there are some states, quite honestly, if you look at Illinois, for example, they probably have gerrymandering from a Democratic perspective. End of the day, I think Iowa has the single best system in the country, a citizens panel, districts are fair, elections are real, and, I don't think we should be afraid of having fair elections, period. To the other question, it's very similar. In fact, we've consulted folks in North Carolina what's happening. This is a trend. Republicans who don't get their way in elections then find another way to scam the system. It's very third world dictatorship in style, and that's what they're doing in Wisconsin and Michigan right now, just like 2 years ago happened in North Carolina. I expect there'll be legal challenges. I expect they'll lose some aspects of it, but it's totally trying to circumvent what the voters decided in November.
James in Spokane, Washington. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, sorry for the delay. Congressman, I'd like to ask if you think possibly some of the rules of Congress should be like enshrined in the Constitution so that they're not manipulated every 2 or 4 years. I mean, specifically, the Speaker of the House can block legislation from coming to the floor for 2 years. That seems kind of inefficient. Thank you.
Yeah, James, I haven't put a lot of thought to it, so I'm actually, you can see my head is cocked as I'm thinking through this right now. I mean, I do think that you have to be fluid with rules. Like right now, Donald Trump has made us need rules that we've never had in place because we've never had any president act like he does. So I don't know if, trying to change the Constitution is the answer because that makes things very difficult. But obviously, we don't want to give too much power to any individual when, especially in the House of Representatives, we're the closest to the people. People can unelect us every 2 years, so you want to keep that very fluid. So I'm not sure if the Constitution makes the most sense, but we certainly are having to come up with new ways of looking at things given the abuses by this administration.
Yeah, and the rapid changes in the filibuster rules in the Senate, too. It's like this is happening all over. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls, Middays with Mark, here on the Thom Hartmann Program, the first hour Wednesday. And we'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan in just a moment. You can find his website at Pocan, POCAN.house.gov. You can tweet him at @RepMarkPocan. And he is the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. We'll be right back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan right after this.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stick around. We'll be right back. Thanks so much for supporting Free Speech TV. There literally, it's about 2% of you, as best we can tell, between 1% and 2%, who every pledge drive or every other pledge drive or maybe every third pledge drive call up and make a contribution. And 98% of you don't, ever. And so I want to start out by saying thank you to that small percentage who do. This is not uncommon. In public radio, it's, 4 or 5% of people, contribute. We need to get that number up, though, And so there's two things. Number one, if you've never given to Free Speech TV before, if you've never contributed to Free Speech before, or if you haven't in the last year, please call now. Please consider making a contribution. You know, $20 makes a big difference, actually. It doesn't need to be a $1,000 gift or a $5,000 gift. $20. If a lot of people give $20, and there are a lot of people watching right now, then we have a much better chance of keeping this network on the air, keeping this show on the air. It's important stuff. Free Speech TV really needs your help. And, you know, supporting Free Speech TV and supporting our program as well is this is just, it's really important. I don't know how to say it beyond that. This network is doing extraordinary work. Somebody was tweeting about it just this morning. You know, I love Free Speech TV. It's not beholden to any industries, and it's true. There's, you know, CNN, MSNBC, you know, other networks. They're afraid of offending their advertisers. They don't want to speak ill of the oil industry or the, you know, fill in the blank, right? And Free Speech TV, I mean, you know, well, we don't want to speak ill of our donors. Oh, that's not a problem. I love our donors. So, anyway, it's critical that we keep this network going, and we can only do it with your help. The number is 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. Please call now and make a contribution to keep Free Speech TV going. With a $20 gift, you get a Free Speech TV window sticker. It's 3x8. It's clear with the logo and Free Speech TV, and I'm guessing this is one of those clingy ones rather than one of the sticky ones, but I'm not sure, so you might want to inquire when you call. With the $60 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Tag You're It coffee mug. This is a ceramic mug. It's a real nice, high-quality mug with a picture of me on it and Tag You're It. With a $72 gift, you get the new 2018 edition, the third edition of, I think this is frankly, the most important book I've written. This and Walking Your Blues Away, I think, are probably the two most important books I've written. And it's The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, The Fate of the World and What We Can Do Before It's Too Late. And it's really a story about how our dysfunctional culture has inevitably, you know, I mean, it was predictable 10,000 years ago that this kind of a culture organized along these hierarchical, patriarchal, ignore the planet and, you know, consumption-based lines, this culture that basically emerged out of the Middle East around somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 years ago following the agricultural revolution, that culture, which has now spread all over the world, will end up destroying the world if we don't regulate it or control it or understand it or awaken from it. And so really most of the book is about culture, but the specific thing that is the last hours of ancient sunlight, the specific thing that's ancient sunlight is fossil fuels. That's sunlight that was captured hundreds of millions of years ago and, you know, by plants, and then the plant matter was stored in the earth as carbon. Carbon is the storage system for that sunlight. And then when that carbon comes out, we burn that carbon, we burn natural gas, oil, coal, and we liberate that carbon back into the atmosphere. So, so we updated it. I updated the book over the last year and a half or so to include all the latest information on climate change. So it's a really solid book. That's a $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt and the sticker. With a $240 gift, Louise and I are putting together a personal growth NLP webinar. It'll be a live event that we'll hold on the internet that will only be open to people who are $240 donors at Free Speech TV. That's it. It's the only way to get it. And we're going to be talking about the various ways that you can use neuro-linguistic programming in NLP to improve your communications, to improve the way that you, you know, family, friends, relationships, all these things. It all has to do with how we communicate. With a $360 gift, you get 5 books: The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, The Thom Hartmann Reader, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy by Greg Palast, and Rebooting the American Dream by me. And with a $480 gift, you get all 5 books, plus the T-shirt, plus the sticker, plus the coffee mug. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and I'll buy you lunch. You can hang out the last hour of the show here and see how we do it. You know, we work electronic magic in a very small space, and it works out pretty well. So those are the premiums, but the important thing is to keep this network going. We have to keep this network going. And your help, your support, is the difference between Free Speech TV literally existing or not existing. Call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Congressman Mark Pocan is on the line with us. It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program, taking your calls for the hour. Mike in Spooner, Wisconsin, you are on. My call screen software just crashed. Let me try to bring it back up again here. Congressman, you are there with us, right?
I am. I'm here.
Okay, this should just take a second. It's been behaving funky in the last day or three, and I'm not sure exactly why, but let's see if, there we go. Mike, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Congressman Pocan. I wanted to find out if there was anything that we can do to overturn or what can be done to get rid of the changes that the lame duck session in Wisconsin has done to kneecap Governor-elect Evers. Can we bring suit as a group of voters against Voss and Fitzgerald and possibly Governor Walker?
So, in fact, ironically, that's one of the things that they try to curtail the Attorney General being able to do suits that they want the legislative approval. But there will be lawsuits, no question. This is similar to what happened in North Carolina 2 years ago. Just the provision around early voting, something very similar was found unconstitutional previously. So I'm guessing now we will get to spend lots of taxpayer dollars for this these efforts to usurp the voters by the Republicans, and we'll win on some, we won't on others, but there will be lawsuits without question.
William in Silver Springs, Nevada, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi. We had spoken before about restoring Pell Grants for my 18-year-old. And this year, my payments for my house and my property taxes are up $3,000. And I really need the relief. I was wondering if you could advance that bill that you had told me you had written, and that's some of the business that the Democrats could do right away.
Yeah, William, so I think on the good news front, absolutely, we're going to do a higher education reauthorization. We will address the issues around financial aid, and there is strong support among the Democratic caucus for that. So that's the good news. The still tough news is the Senate has not changed, and Lamar Alexander has been a major stumbling block in the Senate as a former Secretary of Education when it comes to financial aid. So it's not necessarily a complete 100% that it's going to happen, but we can absolutely get it out of our House and have a bargaining power we never had before. And I hope we'll do that, because the worst thing that could possibly happen is someone who's smart enough and talented enough not be able to get in higher education simply because they can't afford it. That's not what this country's about.
Mick in Santa Cruz, California, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, good morning, Tom and Mark. Thank you again for taking my call. I'm calling because for the children that are still incarcerated in the camps in Texas. So we spoke about this about a month and a half ago, and I haven't seen anything moving forward to liberate them from their predicament. I would like to, I'm mainly concerned about this lame duck session that's going on in Congress. What if the Republicans do what they're doing in Wisconsin, can they not do the same in Congress in the United States?
You know, that is a great question. And I told Tom this weeks ago, I was afraid that they could do a whole lot of damage with the last chance to have the House, the Senate, and the White House. The good news is the ineptitude of the last 8 years is continuing in the last month, that they can't corral their own members, the fights among the Tea Party and the rest, and Paul Ryan doesn't know how to govern. All of that has made it that they're barely able to even get the funding bills done and the Farm Bill and a couple must-do things. I don't think they're going to come in with other separate legislation. Now, we do have to watch for riders on this final appropriations bill, so we are watching that. And the good news, I think, is when we take over, absolutely we can start defunding some of the detention beds and going after that very aggressively with Democrats in control. So there is good news on the horizon, And I guess the good news right now is Republicans' ineptitude is working for us right now. And let's ride out the next few weeks and hopefully not have the same damage at the federal level.
Perry in Granite Bay, California. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning, Congressman. Not to beat a dead horse, but I wanted to talk about gerrymandering and also our voting rights. Why can't we in Congress come up with a federal law that states must follow a straight grid system? So that way we don't have all of the funky districts and all the gerrymandering going on. And why in Congress can't we do like compulsory voting to get rid of voter suppression or vote by mail so that we don't have to stand in line and can actually take our time and vote, and we can wait a month to get the results. We're adults. We can wait to get final results. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so H.R. 1, the very first bill next session, will be a bill by the Democrats that has electoral, campaign finance, and ethics reform. So it's a good government package coming out, dealing with dark money, dealing with a lot of the abuses by the Trump administration ethics-wise, and dealing with voting rights. So I think you're going to see that come out of the gate as the first bill. We'll have hearings. We'll be talking about it and moving it forward. The problem is we still have a Republican Senate and White House. So we will talk about gerrymandering because that's something we have been saying is an abuse that has to be addressed. We will talk about voting rights. I'm not sure if we'll talk about vote by mail or that. It might be more around ensuring paper ballots on machines, ensuring ways to make sure people aren't dumped off a list, ensuring people have a right to vote in places where it's very difficult to vote. Those are for sures. I'm not sure about the one item that you mentioned, but that will be at the forefront of what we deal with in the next session. And right now, many of us are working to make sure the strongest possible provisions are put in that bill.
Ron in Stillwater, Minnesota. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom. I just got done reading the Wisconsin Constitution, and it says that the legislature has the right to determine the job description of the Attorney General. And also, the legislature is the only one that can propose amendments to the Constitution. The people of Wisconsin can't use their referendum to do that. So I'd just like your comments on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a legislative power almost anywhere as far as, what responsibilities might be to a certain type of job. The problem is they never wanted to do it until they lost the position of Attorney General, which is why we're kind of crying foul with what they're doing. They want now oversight over it. The second part is true. Wisconsin, we don't have binding referendums. We have advisory only. We had both legalization of marijuana and medical marijuana on ballots where about 50% of the people in the state of Wisconsin voted. Overwhelmingly, they passed, and yet you'll see no action come out of the legislature. I do think sometimes, binding referendums are tricky business. California is still paying for a very bad tax one decades ago. But I do think that, the more we can have people having a say, especially if Republican lawmakers are going to be this abusive, we need to figure out how to curtail their powers.
Ken in Great Falls, Montana. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I'm concerned about climate change, what path we're taking. I've worked in the industry for so long. I think a lot of us really want a carbon tax. So I'm wondering what the path looks like now that we have some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, my hope, and let me give you a 30,000, and I'll try to get a little more specific, Ken. I mean, we now have a new Green Deal proposed, although it's in evolution of what exactly it is. I'm not sure when it's going to be in its final position yet. We have committees that want to take up real legislation around climate change that we haven't been able to for the last 8 years. So this is a good point of time for us to be talking about this and how to get to more renewables. And if we invest in, like we put solar in our home back in Wisconsin, solar and wind and other renewables are so much more efficient, and yet those are also jobs right here in the United States. Those are strong arguments to have that, and we need to have that debate, and we will have that debate very early. Specifically to a carbon tax, there has been a proposal out there to tax carbon that should try to make companies figure out ways. It's a financial incentive for them to try to figure out ways to have less carbon. I think that's a good idea. The proposal right now puts all the money back to consumers. I've always said, just if I had my magic wand, which I don't on this, I would like to see some of that money go towards research and development in renewables, because it does take a little more investment in that area to make this really expand in the way we need to. And somehow we're going to have to find funding to get that done as well.
Brian in Grant, Michigan, listening on AM 1680. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi. Congressman, I think that the Democrats need to stop talking about the minimum wage and start talking about a maximum wage. I'm thinking specifically about 50 times whatever they pay their median employee, or 75 times whatever they pay their least paid employee, and make that the rallying cry instead of minimum wage, because that way the wealthy can make as much as they want as long as they bring everybody else with them.
So I think a couple of things. One, we can do things on multiple fronts. We should raise minimum wage because it's long, long overdue. We should make it easier for people to collectively bargain, to have a say in their workplace, and to bargain for their wages. But the provision you're talking about is a provision that Barbara Lee actually has a bill. Before that, it was Congressman Sabo out of Minnesota that had a link, and I believe it's 25 to 1. You can deduct wages up to 25 times your lowest paid employee. So all these excessive amounts that are paid to people, you could still pay that to a person, but you wouldn't be able to deduct it as a business expense because it would be considered unreasonable because of how low you're paying your lowest paid employee. So there have been ideas like that put forward. I haven't heard much about whether or not that'll be proposed again or put out next session, but I do think we can approach this from multiple fronts. And for me, especially as someone who comes from a union background, making sure that collective bargaining rights it's much easier to be able to organize and have a unified voice is of crucial importance if you're going to raise wages.
Bill in Amherst, Mass, listening to WHMP. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Congressman Pocan. I'm so impressed with how quickly you can think your way through all these challenging questions. I just want to make a brief comment about the upcoming agenda for the Democrats in the Congress. There's this ongoing messaging that says, are you going to investigate or are you going to create policy? And I feel like that's a false dichotomy, that investigation from the Republican perspective has often been, who can we punish? But I really feel like that Democrats need to have a message called, we're holding people accountable and we're encouraging people to behave, and we're overlooking what they're doing and suggesting how they might do it rather than trying to figure out who to blame and who to catch. So I just think it's undermining of the larger perspective when you say, are you going to do one thing or are you going to do the other, as if there's a split that makes good sense, and I don't think there is. Thank you.
Bill, I think that's a terrific point. And I've been saying, you can walk and chew gum, right? We can put policy initiatives to pass to show the direction we should be going. So we give some aspirational goals for people to see what's possible. And we can also do what Congress has not done for 2 years, which is provide meaningful oversight over this administration and the agencies that we have responsibility. When you have a committee called Oversight and Government Reform, oversight is in their name, as will Judiciary, as will Intelligence, as will every committee has oversight responsibilities. So we can absolutely do both, and we should, and I appreciate your point.
Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program. His website, pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan, and he is the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. He also represents the 2nd District of Wisconsin in the U.S. House of Representatives. We'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan in just a moment.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program. Back with Congressman Pocan in just a moment. And welcome back. Mike in Fairview, Michigan, watching on Free Speech TV. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hello, Tom. Congressman, I was wondering, I just put a cookie on, I'm sorry. My question is there a possibility that we can explore a national holiday for a vote, for everybody to have the day off? That would obviously give everybody a chance. I'll take it off the air. Thank you.
Yeah, Mike, I think there's a lot of things we can do. A national holiday, Saturday voting, mail-in voting, which is working extremely well in places like Oregon. early voting. I mean, why do you have to do it all in one day? There's no reason necessarily, and yet that's part of what they were fighting in Wisconsin, because in Madison, Wisconsin, the largest city in my district, we had 93% turnout for the midterm elections.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's why they're trying to stop it, Tom. That's part of what they're behind. But there are a lot of things you can do to make it easier to vote. And, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, independent, nonpartisan, bipartisan, whatever it is. You should be able, we should all agree that voting is a good thing. It's the one great equalizer we have in democracy. The one thing that the Koch brothers and my brother and I have in common is that we all have one vote, and that's why it's so important to a vibrant democracy. So I think there are many provisions we can do, including the one that you suggested, and I hope that we'll do more of that innovative thinking as we move forward.
Ed in Belfair, Washington, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan. Thanks for watching Free Speech.
Good morning, Congressman. My question has to do with the new Congress coming in and all the young people. I've been in the union for over 32 years, and I encourage anybody when they get hired to speak up. Why is it that same old people are constantly talking on the floor of the Congress when I watch C-SPAN? Why don't the new members get an opportunity to stand up and speak more often? I don't get enough output from the new people coming in. It seems like it's constantly the same old people. The only place I see new people coming on board and getting to talk is on Tom's show, and I appreciate that. I'll take your answer off the phone. Thank you.
Sure, Ed. I think the problem might be slightly different. The problem is who covers who's speaking. So when the corporate media only covers 20 people as if there's only 20 members of Congress, then you only see them. Because really there are no barriers to us getting on the floor. You may, by your seniority, not be the first person to speak on an issue, but there's almost always time to speak on the floor. And for the really new members, they're not elected yet. They're not going to have floor time until January 3rd. But I guarantee they're going to be a vocal group. It's a very vibrant, exciting group of new people that just got elected. So it's really our problem more is who gets covered. And I don't quite have the answer. Tom and I have had this discussion many times with the listeners. It is one of our trickiest parts.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one. We just have 20 seconds to break, Congressman. Has there been any more discussion in your caucus about creative theater, with theatrical politics to draw the attention of the media?
You're already seeing it with some of the newest members. This week at the Harvard training for freshmen, I saw a number of the more progressive members, CPC members, hold a rally outside of the training on healthcare for all. That's different, and it caught attention, and I love it.
That's great. That's great. We need more of that. That is great stuff. Absolutely. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls. We'll be right back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan. You can check out his website at pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at @RepMarkPocan. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Middays with Mark here. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls. Thomas in my hometown, Lansing, Michigan. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan. Thomas.
How are you, Congressman? Student loan debt, as you know, is now a crisis. 1.5 trillion owed. It's killing young people. And it's also killing parents who took out some of these loans for their children to get a good education. With this new Congress coming in, will this topic finally be addressed? And do you see anything being done in the near horizon?
Yeah, Thomas, I think that there's very good prospects. So the first bill ever introduced into Congress was when I came into Congress back in 2013 on being able to refinance student debt. People are stuck with really high interest loans. The interest rates were down quite a bit, and yet you can refinance your house or car, but not your debt. That's something that we should be able to pass, and it should be a bipartisan issue. Student debt-free college is a proposal that we have come up with through the Progressive Caucus, working with groups like Demos and other national groups. The idea is that you should be able to go to a 4-year public institution and leave with no debt. Now, that requires you probably to work 10 or 12 hours a week in work study, but we have a bill that incentivizes universities and states to help make that happen. I think those are all some real ideas we can put out there, in addition to other ideas that have been out there on free tuition and trying to create more opportunities for financial aid. Those are priorities, and I think we have the higher education reauthorization that will happen this session. Now, we still have a Republican Senate and President, but I think we've got some good ways to bring those ideas forward and actually have them hit the floor of Congress.
Denise in Calumet, Michigan, you're on with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Congressman Pocan, yesterday we heard in Michigan that the Republicans are trying to take away any minimum wage laws. They don't want to raise any minimum wage ever in statewide.
Yeah, I know your legislature is doing kind of like Wisconsin. Wisconsin, though, went after powers of the governor a little more. You folks seem to be going after issues a little more, and you already have term limits. So you've got a group of folks, sometimes I think a little too tight of term limits. By the third term, they're all looking to cash out and work as lobbyists and other things. But, you've got to go after the gerrymandering in your state because that's the single best way to try to fix what they're doing and not allow them to get away with it. But my best to you as you're moving forward, because I saw some of the provisions just briefly that they're recommending in Michigan. And in many ways, while they're not going after individuals' power, they're going after some pretty substantial issues.
Yeah. Marta in Big Bear Lake, California, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi. Yes, this is related. I wonder if there's any way to push for a massive investment in higher education. Republicans are attacking the entire institution. Across the nation, college instructors are on food stamps. Their salaries are extremely low. Student loans are extremely high. In California, and we've built 23 prisons and only 4 universities in the past 4 decades. So what can we do?
Yeah, Marta, so I tell you, this is part of why this proposal around debt-free college I'm most excited by, because there's some appeal to people who may not necessarily be supportive of an idea like free tuition because of the cost. What the idea does is it's more than just your tuition, right? You're paying tuition, you have living expenses, you have books, which have gotten very expensive. This proposal takes all of those costs into consideration and says you should be able to leave with a 4-year degree from a public institution with no debt whatsoever. And what that does is we incentivize, give some additional financial aid, make sure states don't increase their tuition too excessively, and the universities have put a little skin in the game by some of the positions that students will work through work study. But by doing this, we're able to make it so that someone could do 10 or 12 hours a week in work study and leave with a 4-year degree with zero debt whatsoever, and that includes all expenses. I think that's an exciting proposal. There may be tweaks to it, and we're open to having those conversations. But I think that's the kind of idea that still keeps the universities strong with the funding they need and not having the stranglehold that many states have been doing by cutting back, and provides the help that students need to get that higher education.
Congressman, in the last 30 seconds of this hour, what should we be looking for in the week ahead?
The week ahead, so we're in for 2 more weeks now because we couldn't get our job done and figure out the funding of government. So watch that. Be ready to make calls. If they try to put border funding in, even though the Senate has it, in the House, many of us will not support border funding. But we're going to look for a lot of other things. So be ready to be an activist in the remaining 2 weeks that we're in session.
Yeah, there you go. Congressman Mark Pocan, thank you so much for being with us, Congressman.
Of course. Thank you so much, Tom.
Great talking with you. Middays with Mark here on the Thom Hartmann Program. You can contact Congressman Pocan's office, or you can see his website, or you can do both at pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan. Pramila Jayapal and Dr. Michael Mann will both be up in the next hour. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Free Speech TV is in their fund drive right now, their fundraising drive, and so it would be a great time for you to call 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. And of course, you can go to the Free Speech TV website and donate there as well. Please be sure to mention the show. There are a lot of great goodies that Free Speech TV is offering right now as part of the funds drive. And in fact, there's quite a few. But the important thing is to call 877-378-8669. Here's some information on one of the things that you can get. With a $72 contribution, you get the new edition. Troy Miller and I spent a year and a half going through all the research and updating everything and getting this thing exactly right with all the new climate change information, the last hours of ancient sunlight. That's with a $72 contribution, autographed by the author. Thanks so much for supporting Free Speech TV. Literally, it's about 2% of you, as best we can tell, between 1 and 2%, who every pledge drive or every other pledge drive or maybe every third pledge drive call up and make a contribution. And 98% of you don't, ever. And so I want to start out by saying thank you to that small percentage who do. This is not uncommon. In public radio, it's 4 or 5% of people contribute. We need to get that number up, though. And so there's two things. Number one, if you've never given to Free Speech TV before, if you've never contributed to Free Speech before, or if you haven't in the last year, please call now. Please consider making a contribution. $20 makes a big difference, actually. It doesn't need to be a $1,000 gift or a $5,000 gift. $20. If a lot of people give $20, and there are a lot of people watching right now, then we have a much better chance of keeping this network on the air, keeping this show on the air. It's important stuff. Free Speech TV really needs your help. And, supporting Free Speech TV and supporting our program as well is just, it's really important. I don't know how to say it beyond that. This network is doing extraordinary work. Somebody was tweeting about it just this morning. I love Free Speech TV. It's not beholden to any industries, and it's true. There's CNN, MSNBC, other networks. They're afraid of offending their advertisers. They don't want to speak ill of the oil industry or the, fill in the blank, right? And Free Speech TV, we don't want to speak ill of our donors. Well, that's not a problem. I love our donors. So anyway, it's critical that we keep this network going, and we can only do it with your help. The number is 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669. Please call now and make a contribution to keep Free Speech TV going. With a $20 gift, you get a Free Speech TV window sticker. It's 3x8. It's clear with the logo and Free Speech TV, and I'm guessing this is one of those clingy ones rather than one of the sticky ones, but I'm not sure, so you might want to inquire when you call. With the $60 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Tag You're It coffee mug. This is a ceramic mug. It's a real nice, high-quality mug with a picture of me on it and Tag You're It. With a $72 gift, you get the new 2018 edition, the third edition of, I think this is frankly, the most important book I've written. This and Walking Your Blues Away, I think, are probably the two most important books I've written. And it's The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, The Fate of the World and What We Can Do Before It's Too Late. And it's really a story about how our dysfunctional culture has inevitably, it was predictable 10,000 years ago that this kind of a culture organized along these hierarchical, patriarchal, ignore the planet and consumption-based lines. This culture that basically emerged out of the Middle East around somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 years ago, following the agricultural revolution. That culture, which has now spread all over the world, will end up destroying the world if we don't regulate it or control it or understand it or awaken from it. And so really most of the book is about culture, but the specific thing that is the last hours of ancient sunlight, the specific thing that's ancient sunlight is fossil fuels. That's sunlight that was captured hundreds of millions of years ago and, by plants, and then the plant matter was stored in the earth as carbon. Carbon is the storage system for that sunlight. And then when that carbon comes out, we burn that carbon. We burn natural gas, oil, coal, and we liberate that carbon back into the atmosphere. So we updated it. I updated the book over the last year and a half or so to include all the latest information on climate change. So it's a really solid book. That's a $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt and the sticker. With a $240 gift, Louise and I are putting together a personal growth NLP webinar. It'll be a live event that we'll hold on the internet that will only be open to people who are $240 donors at Free Speech TV. That's it. It's the only way to get it. And we're going to be talking about the various ways that you can use neuro-linguistic programming in NLP to improve your communications, to improve the way that you, family, friends, relationships, all these things. It all has to do with how we communicate. With a $360 gift, you get 5 books: The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, The Thom Hartmann Reader, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy by Greg Palast, and Rebooting the American Dream by me. And with a $480 gift, you get all 5 books, plus the t-shirt, plus the sticker, plus the coffee mug. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and I'll buy you a lunch. You can hang out the last hour of the show here and see how we do it. We work electronic magic in a very small space, and it works out pretty well. So those are the premiums, but the important thing is to keep this network going. We have to keep this network going. And your help, your support, is the difference between Free Speech TV literally existing or not existing. Call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. On the line with us is Dr. Michael Mann, the Distinguished Professor of Meteorology and the Director of the Earth System Science Center at Penn State University. He's the author of several books, including The Madhouse Effect: How Climate Change Denial is Threatening Our Planet, Destroying Our Politics, and Driving Us Crazy. His website, michaelmann.net. You can tweet him at Michael E. Mann. Michael, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Tom. Always good to be with you.
Or Dr. Mann. It's so good to have you with us. We were gonna start off with this, tipping points and what's going on here, but this literally at the top of the Washington Post, the logo is breaking news. We are in trouble, in quotes. Global carbon emissions reached a new record high in 2018. They said that they had hoped for it to be flat. Those hopes have been dashed. In 2017, global emissions grew 1.6%. The rise in 2018 is 2.7%, or is projected to be by the year's end. A record high of 37.1 billion tons of carbon dioxide a year. China going up 5%, India 6%, U.S. up 2.5%, EU down 1%. What does all this mean?
Yeah, so it is disappointing given that there were several years in a row, 2014, 2015, 2016, where emissions had actually flatlined or even slightly declined. And so it looked like we were beginning to see that, that curve bend downward. We ultimately needed to come to zero, to go to zero within a matter of a decade or two if we're going to avoid crossing the threshold of dangerous interference with our climate. These latest numbers suggest that, we've now seen an uptick. What we thought was the flattening of the curve was sort of a bit more temporary, and we're seeing increases again. Now, overall, the rates of increase have gone down tremendously, but we're still seeing increases at a time when we'd like to see decreases. And that's a reminder that the commitments that the various countries of the world have made in the form of the Paris Accord was signed several years ago by every country, including the United States, despite the fact that Donald Trump has threatened to back out of it. Those commitments got us about halfway to the reductions that we need to avoid dangerous warming of the planet. But it hardly solves the problem. We need to improve on those commitments. And right now, politicians are meeting in Poland in the next conference of the parties, subsequent to the Paris Accord and the other recent conferences. And this is an opportunity for countries to begin to ratchet up those commitments. We're probably not going to see a new set of commitments in Poland at this latest conference, but this is supposed to be laying the groundwork, in essence, for a future ratcheting up of our commitments, the commitments of the various countries of the world to decreasing their carbon emissions.
I don't know if you saw the article in the New York Times this week about, or last week about it's titled "Insect Apocalypse." It points out that, well, it started, I mean, on this show, maybe 6, 8, 10 years ago, a trucker called in and said, 20 years ago, I'd drive across the country and I'd have to stop every stop and clean the bugs off my windshield. Now I can drive from coast to coast and not do it once. And then all kinds of people called in from all over the country saying the same thing. They're not seeing bugs anymore. This article pointed out, and we were speculating on the air, thinking that it was neonicotinoids or pesticides. But these latest studies out of Costa Rica's jungles, out of 70-plus pristine forest preserves in Germany, where there are no pesticides, they're seeing 70 to 80% declines in total insect population by mass. And as a consequence of this, birds are starving. And the only thing that they can come up with is that when you warm just a couple of degrees, it starts sterilizing male insects. Their ability to reproduce collapses. You combine that with the wildfires we're seeing in California, the floods we're seeing, the hurricanes, and all this. I mean, haven't we already passed, arguably, a threshold that is destructive climate?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you define dangerous. If you talk to people in California, if you talk to the folks who are studying the insect decline, if you talk to people in North Carolina, Houston, who've been impacted by these unprecedented superstorms. So whether it's the unprecedented wildfires in California, the superstorms that have hit our coastlines in recent years, the sort of endless seeming spate of thousand-year floods, record floods that we see over and over again now. We are venturing into uncharted waters, and we are already seeing impacts, climate change impacts, that could reasonably be defined as dangerous. It's a question of how bad are we willing to let it get. If we warm the planet by more than 2 degrees Celsius, 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit, then the scientists who study the impacts of climate change will tell you that's where we really see the stuff hit the fan. And there is still time to make the commitments necessary to avoid crossing that threshold. But there is an urgency now, unlike anything that we faced before. We really have to not only bring emissions to flatline when they're actually increasing, but bring them down now by 5% or so a year for the next decade or two if we are going to avoid crossing this threshold, going past the 2 degrees Celsius exit ramp on this carbon highway onto 3 degrees, 3.5 degrees. For every 0.5 degree Celsius, 1 degree Fahrenheit additional warming of the planet, the impacts get that much worse. And we're already seeing, by any stretch of the imagination, dangerous climate change impacts as we speak.
Yeah, Guatemala has been hit really, really hard by climate change, and a lot of farmers are being pushed off their farms by, just these droughts and things. And they're showing up on our doorstep. I mean, this is Donald Trump screaming about the immigrants. A lot of these people are from Guatemala. What do we have to do? What is the specific action plan to avoid these tipping points, to try to reduce our emissions and go into negative emissions, or at least reduce them?
Yeah, so some tipping points we've already perhaps crossed, and others are imminent, and others may lie in the future, and we don't know exactly where they are. So the only sensible policy is to stop emitting carbon as quickly as possible. And there are lots of things that we can do in our everyday lives that decrease our own carbon footprint, and we should do those things. If you're willing to change your diet, I no longer eat meat. If we shift away from a meat-heavy diet, we can decrease our carbon emissions that way. If we use less energy, and if we elect to get our energy from renewable sources by putting up solar panels, by purchasing a power plant from your power company that is entirely renewable driven, which is the case with our electricity plan. There are lots of things that we can do in our everyday lives that save us money, they make us healthier, they make us feel better about ourselves, they set a good example for others to follow, but that's not enough. We need government incentives. If we are going to see the sorts of reductions in carbon emissions that we need to see, 5% or so a year for decades into the future, eventually, as you allude to, bringing those emissions down to zero, and maybe we even need to bring them negative later on in the century if we are going to avoid crossing ever more dangerous thresholds of greenhouse gas levels and resulting climate change. We may literally have to start sucking some of that carbon dioxide back out of the atmosphere. So now, ultimately, a price on carbon, a market signal will help us move in the direction we need to, and electing politicians who will support our interests rather than the polluting interests who often fund their campaigns, who will vote for a price on carbon.
Amen. Amen. Dr. Michael Mann, his book, The Madhouse Effect, michaelmann.net. Dr. Mann, thank you so much.
Thank you. Always good.
Great talking with you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be right back with more of the news of the day, and Pramila Jayapal is going to drop by in a few minutes. And welcome back. Nancy in Detroit, Michigan, watching on Free Speech TV. Hey, Nancy, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I have a question. I've been wondering this for the past 6 months at least. Why isn't there a education qualification for someone to become president?
Well, we've had presidents who had very little formal education. We've had presidents who've had extraordinary formal educations. I think that the framers of the Constitution, when they were discussing this issue, decided that rather than them deciding who should be future presidents, rather than them deciding what should be the criteria for future presidents, that it should be, to paraphrase several of the framers, actually, the people themselves. So the assumption was that through an open political process where, members, where candidates for president would compete with each other in a robust and public environment, that what would shake out of that, what would come out of that would be the people making a good judgment, a good determination. And, obviously with Donald Trump, that's not what happened. What provokes the question, Nancy?
Originally, I was going to ask, is there a qualification? Because I read about 15 years ago, I read a book by the autobiographer of Fred Trump's, his original book. And before he died, the autobiographer, he wrote a book that contained information that wasn't in any of the autobiographies of Fred Trump. And in there was the fact that Donald Trump attended grade 5 twice, but he wasn't able to pass it. He flunked it both times, so his father took him out of school. And the word was that his older brother, would take care of his younger brother, Donald. But after the older brother committed suicide, and that it was because he was ashamed of his father being the grand wizard of the KKK. I guess the other kids teased him, and he was ashamed of it anyways.
That's it.
So he ended up killing himself, and then Donald was the only one his father could leave his fortune to. Yeah. But Donald never was, he left grade school unable to read anything outside of Dr. Seuss. And still today, he has never gone to any other school except when his father put him in that Pennsylvania school just to keep him from being sent to Vietnam. But even the people there said they never saw him with a book. He never went into a classroom. They would meet him either in a cafeteria or outside.
Yeah, and that was back in the 60s. I was going to MSU back then, and a friend of mine, his first name was Brad, had started a company actually doing term papers for students. I mean, it was not uncommon back then for particularly some of the athletic students to hire people to sit in for them in classes, to take tests for them. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Trump did that. But I don't, I don't know anything about the biographies, Nancy, or the profile details that you were talking about. So I'll have to look into it. Nancy, thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for listening to us. We'll be back. Congressmember Jayapal will be with us in just a moment. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And on the line with us is Congressmember Pramila Jayapal of Washington State, and a member of the U.S. Congress. She is the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. She represents the 7th District of Washington. Or, excuse me, she's the first vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Congressmember Jayapal, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Tom. And actually, I am the co-chair.
That's what I thought.
The co-chair.
Yeah, it's you and Mark Pocan. Okay. So I read this extraordinary piece that you wrote in the New York nybooks.com, the New York Review of Books, I believe it is. Yeah, and you talked about how your parents used all their savings to send you across the oceans from India at the age of 16. You got your U.S. citizenship in the year 2000. You started the largest immigrant advocacy organization in Washington State. You're the first South Asian American woman in the House of Representatives, and one of only 12 members of the 115th Congress who are proud naturalized citizens. This is great, and the rest of the piece is a real brilliant deep dive into immigration and the benefits of immigration and how we need to reboot our system. Where should we start with all this?
Well, I think, the reason I wrote the piece is because I feel like the conversation has been taken so far backwards and so far to the right by Donald Trump and people who are really determined to take our attention away from making sure this country works for everybody, and also recognizing our history on immigration and sort of the benefits of immigrants to our country and to our identity and to our future. And so the piece is called A New Moral Imagination on Immigration, and it really tries to lay out a little bit of history, because a lot of people don't know the history, and a lot of the lies that are being told by the Trump administration really skate right over the facts of our history and how our laws have come into being, and then the incredible lack of updating of our laws to really reflect the needs of our economy and sort of our moral values. And so it takes a big picture look at what is that moral framework? How do we recognize that the United States has always had actually a dueling response to immigration? One side that frankly has been very bigoted, very racist in terms of how our immigration laws came into being, and the other that has been extremely generous and very much based the identity of the country on one that has been forward-thinking, on welcoming people to our country to build it and to help make it better. And so those two have been in conflict just about every generation, and we've had to fight it out every single time. And now we need to understand that this scapegoating and targeting of immigrants is part of a plan of the right, extreme right, because actually this has always been a bipartisan issue until Donald Trump came along. That doesn't mean that we haven't had problems with immigration under Democratic presidents, and you might have seen, as a proud Democrat, I did still call out Democrats for not having taken up this issue and for, in some ways having given in to some of the false paradigms that are being put out there. But I think, really trying to make a case for what comprehensive humane immigration reform looks like, trying to fight back against the lies that are out there, but at the core, understanding how important immigration is to our moral values, to our identity, and really to the future of this country.
Yeah.
So I think it's a complex issue. There's a lot in there in that piece. It was supposed to be a 1,600-word piece, and it's a 3,000-word piece. Because I think there are a lot of pieces to this. But, we got to be strong as Democrats, and hopefully there's some willing Republicans still left to come on board. I think the good thing that I point out in the piece is that as much as Trump tried to use the last elections and frankly his entire 2 years and his campaign to really target and scapegoat immigrants, I think the American people are not there. And there are actually a lot of signs and now new research coming out about voter data that shows that he may have turned off millennials for decades to come, that in many states, while it might have worked in one or two places, the majority of Americans rejected it, and that actually, according to the polling, the approval for immigration and continuing to have a generous immigration policy is at an all-time high.
Right.
And, it's at an all-time low in terms of restricting immigration.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can use that backlash and really create a different way of thinking about this issue. And hopefully we can push Democrats to be bold, to embrace immigration, not to be scared of it, not to shy away from it, and to call slander, and lies.
Yeah. We have about a minute and a half here before we're going to hit a hard break. ICE is threatening the state of New Jersey. They used the same phrase that they did against California. Last year, they said ICE will have no choice but to conduct at-large arrests in local neighborhoods and at work sites. And will inevitably result in additional collateral arrests. They issued the exact same language against New Jersey yesterday. You were down on the Mexican border earlier this week. I think it was on December 1st. That's not ICE. I realize that's border protection. But what do we do with all this? I mean, it's turned into an insane free-for-all, it seems, particularly with all these people on the right and ICE. We have a minute.
Yeah, it's a manufactured crisis. It is a crisis, but it was manufactured by Trump. And so we have thousands of people on the border. And the worst part about this is that many of them, particularly those from Honduras, about 50% of the caravan has been people from Honduras, are fleeing horrendous conditions in their country that the United States has actually been a part of allowing to continue to happen through our own foreign policy. But these folks are not just seeking the American dream. They're really fleeing reigns of terror. And we have limited the Trump administration has limited the ability for people to legitimately seek asylum. That is legal, as much as they'd like to say it isn't. And so we have a way to solve this. It is not, we've had actually larger numbers coming to the border and seeking asylum at other times. We just have to be willing to do it.
Yeah, it's sort of at a low right now, I believe. It has been for a couple of years. Congressmember Pramila Jayapal, she represents the 7th District of Washington. Jayapal.house.gov, the website, and you can tweet her at Rep. Jayapal, Jayapal. Congressmember, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
Great talking with you. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this break. Thanks so much for supporting Free Speech TV. There literally, it's about 2% of you, as best we can tell, between 1% and 2%, who every pledge drive or every other pledge drive or maybe every third pledge drive call up and make a contribution. And 98% of you don't, ever. And so I want to start out by saying thank you to that small percentage who do. This is not uncommon. In public radio, it's, 4 or 5% of people, contribute. we need to get that number up, though. You know. And so there's two things. Number one, if you've never given to Free Speech TV before, if you've never contributed to free speech before, or if you haven't in the last year, please call now. Please consider making a contribution. You know, $20 makes a big difference, actually. It doesn't need to be a $1,000 gift or a $5,000 gift. $20. If a lot of people give $20, and there are a lot of people watching right now, then we have a much better chance of keeping this network on the air, keeping this show on the air. It's important stuff. Free Speech TV really needs your help. And, you know, supporting Free Speech TV and supporting our program as well is this is just, it's really important. I don't know how to say it beyond that. This network is doing extraordinary work. Somebody was tweeting about it just this morning, you know. I love Free Speech TV. It's not beholden to any industries. And it's true. There's, you know, CNN, MSNBC, you know, other networks, they're afraid of offending their advertisers. They don't want to speak ill of the oil industry or the, you know, fill in the blank, right? And Free Speech TV, I mean, you know, well, we don't want to speak ill of our donors. Well, that's not a problem. I love our donors. So anyway, it's critical that we keep this network going, and we can only do it with your help. The number is 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669. Please call now and make a contribution to keep Free Speech TV going. With a $20 gift, you get a Free Speech TV window sticker. It's 3x8. It's clear with the logo and Free Speech TV, and I'm guessing this is one of those clingy ones rather than one of the sticky ones, but I'm not sure, so you might want to inquire when you call. With the $60 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Tag You're It coffee mug. This is a ceramic mug. It's a real nice, high-quality mug with a picture of me on it and Tag You're It. With a $72 gift, you get the new 2018 edition, the third edition of I think this is frankly the most important book I've written. This and Walking Your Blues Away, I think, are probably the two most important books I've written. And it's The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, The Fate of the World and What We Can Do Before It's Too Late. And it's really a story about how our dysfunctional culture has inevitably, you know, I mean, it was predictable 10,000 years ago, that this kind of a culture organized along these hierarchical, patriarchal, ignore the planet and, you know, consumption-based lines, this culture that basically emerged out of the Middle East around somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 years ago, following the agricultural revolution, that culture, which has now spread all over the world, will end up destroying the world if we don't regulate it or control it or understand it or awaken from it. And so really most of the book is about culture, but the specific thing that is the last hours of ancient sunlight, the specific thing that's ancient sunlight is fossil fuels. That's sunlight that was captured hundreds of millions of years ago and, you know, by plants, and then the plant matter was stored in the earth as carbon. Carbon is the storage system for that sunlight. And then when that carbon comes out, we burn that carbon, we burn natural gas, oil, coal, and we liberate that carbon back into the atmosphere. So, so we updated it. I updated the book over the last year and a half or so to include all the latest information on climate change. So it's a really solid book. That's a $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt and the sticker. With a $240 gift, Louise and I are putting together a personal growth NLP webinar. It'll be a live event that we'll hold on the internet that will only be open to people who are $240 donors at Free Speech TV. That's it. It's the only way to get it. And we're going to be talking about the various ways that you can use neuro-linguistic programming in NLP to improve your communications, to improve the way that you, you know, family, friends, relationships, all these things. It all has to do with how we communicate. With a $360 gift, you get 5 books, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, The Thom Hartmann Reader, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy by Greg Palast, and Rebooting the American Dream by me. And with a $480 gift, you get all 5 books, plus the t-shirt, plus the sticker, plus the coffee mug. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and I'll buy you a lunch. You can hang out the last hour of the show here and see how we do it. You know, we work electronic magic in a very small space, and it works out pretty well. So those are the premiums, but the important thing is to keep this network going. We have to keep this network going, and your help, your support, is the difference between Free Speech TV literally existing or not existing. Call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you. With a $20 contribution, and $20 may not sound like a lot of money, but you know, to Free Speech TV, actually it is. This is an entire television network that runs on a little tiny budget. For the $20 contribution, you get a Free Speech TV sticker 3x8. Free Speech TV is in their fund drive right now, their fundraising drive. And so it would be a great time for you to call 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. And of course, you can go to the Free Speech TV website and donate there as well. Please be sure to mention the show. There are a lot of great goodies that Free Speech TV is offering right now as part of the funds drive. And in fact, there's quite a few. But the important thing is to call 877-378-8669. Here's some information on one of the things that you can get. With a $72 contribution, you get the new edition. Troy Miller and I spent a year and a half going through all the research and updating everything and getting this thing exactly right with all the new climate change information, the last hours of ancient sunlight. That's with a $72 contribution, autographed by the author.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and
Craig
Instagram.
in Walkerton, Indiana. Hey, Craig, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Good. What's up?
Grew up in Jackson, listening to WVIC.
Oh, wow! I used to DJ on WVIC.
I know you did that.
Yeah.
Hey, I was listening to one of your reports earlier about the insect loss.
Yeah.
And that's something my wife and I are actually talking about the other day. And one of the things I've noticed, I'm a lifelong hunter, and I read a report the other day about quail hunting in Illinois. Back as late as even the 80s, they would harvest up to 3 million birds a year. 2015, they harvested 30,000.
Wow. Are quail birds that live on insects?
That and soybeans and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But what I've seen, my family, like my grandfather owned 300 acres in western Kentucky. Mm-hmm. My cousin now farms 5,000 acres in that same area. Mm-hmm. There used to be a lot of fence rows and that type of thing, but between the herbicides, the pesticides, the loss of habitat, where you used to be able to not look across the countryside and see very far, now you can look out at 20 miles and not see a fence row.
Yeah.
And you've seen wild populations of birds and rabbits and that type of thing decline precipitously because of that. And on climate change, you have the impact of the cycles of both drought and flooding, yep, which has a negative impact, as well as in the wintertime where you'll see ice storms now. And the birds actually get frozen underneath snow and die because of climate change in that regard.
Yeah.
And I think what we're seeing is the beginning of a mass extinction.
We are in the mass extinction. I mean, this article in the New York Times is absolutely shocking. And a 2-degree climate, 2-degree overall temperature change is enough to massively sterilize male insects. They are very, very, very sensitive to average temperature over periods of time. And this was what was so shocking is, like, these researchers started out going, okay, the wild bird populations and the insect populations have declined. We can definitively say that, on the I-80 corridor, for example, there's all kinds of metrics that prove this. And the initial assumption was that it was industrial agriculture practices that were producing this. It's killing the soil. You're absolutely right, all this habitat loss and everything else. But then they looked at these studies out of Costa Rica where this is not happening. They're not doing industrial agriculture, and in fact, this was in one of the largest tropical areas in the Americas, and in 70 different major wildlife preserves in Germany, where that are just ancient pristine forests, and they're finding the 70 to 80% decline in insect populations in those places too. And they're pretty sure it has to do with the temperature, the average temperature going up, causing the male insects to become less fertile.
I heard that report, a few months ago, possibly on your show.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you can find it if you go over to the New York Times, nytimes.com. It's probably still one of the top 10 most forwarded stories. It was a big deal. It came out last weekend in their, I think it's in the magazine that goes with the paper, but I read everything digitally now, so I'm not sure. But it was one of these long form pieces. But it was shocking. It's just absolutely shocking.
Well, and I told my wife, you never clean the bugs off your window. In the summertime, I said, look out back, because we have 20 acres behind us.
Mm-hmm.
I said you can see a few dozen fireflies out there. When I was a kid, there would be hundreds of them.
Yeah, and butterflies. I had a butterfly net when I was a little kid. I had a butterfly collection. I had like 30 or 40 different kinds of butterflies that I caught, and moths. Now nothing. Just nothing.
I'm actually walking the streets harvesting milkweed seed to plant a milkweed area in my yard.
That's great.
To attract monarchs.
Yeah, that's great, because they need it. But it appears that it's just this confluence of things that are just killing them all off. We're in the midst of this extinction, and we've got to do something fast. Craig, thank you for the call. Thanks a lot.
People think I'm nuts.
No, you're not nuts. You're onto it. You've got it figured out. Craig, thanks for the call. Bob in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. Hey, Bob, the solution to climate change is to tax hemp? Seriously?
Well, sure. I mean, there are things being done all over the country in various states to bring back industrial hemp. At Redlands College here in Oklahoma, for instance, working on how the farmer can maintain the best hemp seed for the climate here in Oklahoma.
Yep.
There's a lot of good work being done to keep Monsanto's hands off of it. But the federal government hasn't yet stopped the prohibition on the cannabis plant.
Right, and we're talking industrial. You're talking industrial hemp. You're not talking about get you high stuff. You're talking about stuff you can make.
Marijuana both.
Yeah,
the plant is cannabis. It is both marijuana and hemp.
Yep.
And it is remaining illegal on the federal level, and so farmers can't really experiment the way they would. It's very limited to very cynical and clinical.
No, your points are all very well made, Bob, and I'm all in favor of industrial hemp and recreational hemp, and I think it's good for our environment. Kelly in San Jose. Hey, Kelly, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Frank Luntz coined the term climate change to replace global warming, and when they do that, they kind of lull people into inaction. And I'd really like to replace both terms with the reality of it, which is it's human-induced climate collapse.
Yeah, and what we're bringing about is a human-induced extinction. And part of it is, I think in a very, very simple form, there's too many people on the planet. And then the other part of it is what all these people, what we're all doing, which is, not sustainable, not renewable, and it's incredibly destructive. Kelly, thanks a lot for the call. Lewis in Portland, Oregon. Hey, Lewis, what's up?
Oh, I just enjoying your program. I support you on Patreon the best I can on
Thank
Patreon. It's about $3 a month, but hey, I've been watching you for years. I found out by your program 3 years ago that you were the one who wrote the book about the 1815 decision between Dartmouth.
Oh, yeah.
Really cool.
The book is, you mean the 1886 decision, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad, my book on unequal protection.
No, actually, it was the corporate personhood with Dartmouth versus a professor.
Oh, well, it started with Dartmouth. Dartmouth was the Dartmouth case in 1818, I think it was, or 1819.
Yes.
Was the first time that the Supreme Court recognized that a corporation could have standing before a court.
But I remember you pointed out that the judges themselves wanted to put it off for legislature. It was a court clerk that was used.
That was the decision in 1886 that would apply that personhood to corporations under the 14th Amendment.
Right.
The 14th Amendment didn't even exist in 1819, so that was not. That was not the
issue. I was in
issue.
a van on the road and saw you on early cable. You and Gary Null and stuff. It was really cool. anyway, my comment is on your agricultural thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think you might be right about the Middle East agriculture being one of the major changes in human behavior that might have caused this patriarchal change in our attitude of approaching man versus nature, manifest destiny. But the new studies have shown that it was one of the major ones, but there were many agricultural, in a sense, revolutions that took place since 30,000 years ago up to 11,000, and a lot of them were lost in history or continued, but they were separate or contiguous with each other, but unknown.
Right.
We didn't have really one agricultural revolution from the latest studies.
Yeah, you're right. There was pastoralism. There was the growing, which is herding animals. There was growing things in fields. There was crop rotation fields that were practiced by natives in North and South America, and all across Africa. There, some very sophisticated, actually, and renewable systems that the indigenous people in Africa and the Americas were using. The one though, read Daniel Quinn's book, Ishmael. The agricultural revolution of having fixed farms and fixed spaces and fencing it off and saying this is my space and these are my crops, and if you're hungry you're going to have to come and do what I tell you because I've got the food. That was the big agricultural revolution that we're continuing now to this day that really has been the most destructive.
Even within that one, that it was one of the key ones that was larger in an area where you had what do they call that, between the Oriental and Occidental culture, that Middle East culture kind of tapped into those. But after that, even an 8,000 year ago and somewhere around 10 to 7, another same type of fencing in took place in other parts of the world as well. They were just not as major in the place, in other words, where it took place.
No, spot on. Louis, thanks for the call. Yeah, amen. It's 45 minutes past the hour. We're going to check in with Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world today in about 4 minutes, so stick around. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Exposing the con in conservative. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. Up next, Ellen Ratner from London. And welcome back. David in Shelton, Washington. Hey, David, what's on your mind?
Yeah, the bugs. I'm a motorcycle rider, and I've noticed it distinctly between Oregon and Washington, where I ride a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But what I called about was the Department of Natural Resources in Washington issued a statement about the sword ferns dying off. And I kind of scoffed it off until I noticed between my property and the neighbors, I live in a very rural area, a great big patch of sword ferns has died and are not growing back. There's the dead fronds from the year before and absolutely no new growth at all. It's like a dead zone.
Ferns are like one of the very oldest forms of vegetable. We had 200-foot tall ferns back literally before there were trees.
Yeah.
What's killing them off?
Nobody knows. As far as I know, the Department of Natural Resources said they were looking into it, but for no apparent reason. And like I say, I scoffed it off. And then, my God,
are sword ferns the one that have the fiddleheads in the spring?
They do. Brackens do also. But sword ferns grow in a clump, and the old ferns are there, and then in the winter, then snow and the rain knock them down, and in the spring, new shoots come way up, and they fan out. Well, I was looking, and here's all these dead ferns sticking up in the air in summer, and no new growth for no apparent reason. Department of Natural Resources made a statement about it. And
David, if you find out what's causing that, would you call me back?
We'll do that.
Okay.
We'll look into it.
Thanks a lot, David. I appreciate it. Maverick in Edmonds, Washington. Hey, Maverick, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Cousin Tom. I'd like to count my voice in, too, as noticing that decline in the insect population. I was a outdoor bug kid all my life, and I don't see them. They're almost gone. But the main thing I wanted to talk about is with all this, with the global warming, environmental damage, and our impact on it. I've been acutely aware lately when I consume products, when I go to maybe get a breakfast sandwich or get dinner at a restaurant, the enormous amount of paper and plastic waste that really only is used for really literally seconds. And I know your listeners are very alert, very aware, and very conscious. And I think raising a conscious awareness of how much material is just so transitory, and the consumption of it, and after it's produced, which is very energy intensive, it has to be disposed of, which
Right.
is also very energy intensive. So
Or a lot of it ends up in the
listeners-
ocean or landfill.
Yeah, so please, listeners, next time you pick up a sandwich or you go to a restaurant, notice that, okay, there's 2 little plastic straws in my cocktail that serve really no purpose, and there's 6 coasters on my table that are made of paper and are disposable. And
Yeah,
I
I've been telling them to leave the
maybe
straws
not.
out of the drinks.
I've been asking them to do that too, and when I pick up a breakfast sandwich, sometimes in the morning, I leave the bag and all the napkins on the counter. But there's still an 11-inch receipt that says your guest number 356.
Right, and it's on thermal paper, by the way, that has PCBs in it. No, it's not PCBs. Bisphenol A, which is a hormone disruptor, and you can literally absorb it through your skin. So just holding on to and touching these thermal printed receipts actually is contaminating your body with a hormone disruptor. It's just nuts what we're doing, Maverick. Thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for listening to KBCS. Ellen Ratner's up next. Stick around. Free Speech TV is in their fund drive right now, their fundraising drive. And so it would be a great time for you to call 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. And of course, you can go to the Free Speech TV website and donate there as well. Please be sure to mention the show. There are a lot of great goodies that Free Speech TV is offering right now as part of the funds drive. And in fact, there's quite a few. But the important thing is to call 877-378-8669. Here's some information on one of the things that you can get. With a $20 contribution, and $20 may not sound like a lot of money, but to Free Speech TV, actually it is. This is an entire television network that runs on a little tiny budget. For the $20 contribution, you get a Free Speech TV sticker, 3x8 clear window with a logo of Free Speech TV. Please call now.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Patreon. Let's check in with Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world today. This report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Ellen Ratner's new book, Loving What You Do. On the line with us live from London is Ellen Ratner. London, Ellen, welcome.
I am in London.
Any
Shirlene went to St. George's Medical School, and there is a nonprofit associated with there, and we have a dinner at the House of Lords about every year and a half, and that's what I'm here for.
How cool is that? Well, what's going on in the world, Ellen?
Okay, well, what's going on in the world is that they are saying there's more firepower now in Afghanistan in the first 10 months than there has been in 2011, which was the largest year. They had 54 missiles in Afghanistan in 2011, 6,000 this year, if you can imagine.
Wait a minute,
Also,
missiles
Brexit.
that we shot or that the bad guys shot?
That we, the United States of America, got it.
So even though we've reduced our troop levels, we've massively increased the amount of ordnance we're dropping on the people of
Firepower.
Afghanistan.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
Not pretty.
So much for ending that war.
Okay, I am in London, and yesterday in the House of Commons, although there's supposed to be a 5-day debate going on in the House of Commons, Theresa May, who's the Prime Minister, got really hit up hard on the Brexit issue. One, they don't like her. She negotiated something, they don't like that. But secondly, 2 different votes went after her because what they said is that she is basically holding out her legal advice and not sharing it with the House of Commons, which had asked for it.
What could be in there that she's trying to hide?
It's like Trump. Who knows what they're trying to hide?
Okay, yeah, these conservatives. So what else is up?
Right, exactly. Okay, Now, on Facebook, it's very interesting. Again, London, it's interesting. There's a court seal in California saying that they can't reveal what Facebook actually, who it allowed into. However, depending on who you talk to, because there's two different news reports, it's either 200 or 250 pages of documents. And the Brits say, hey, we don't have to abide by United States law, so they are releasing the documents from Facebook.
Oh, really? And this has to do with Cambridge Analytica and Facebook selling, peddling your personal information? Yeah.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Now, I was also just in Israel, and Netanyahu, now the question is just like Trump, can he be indicted as a sitting prime minister? They are probably going to indict his wife for taking a bribe, but the question is whether they can indict Netanyahu. Now, the fact is Israelis like Netanyahu because they feel that he's tough. On the other hand, can he really be indicted? That's the question.
Yeah, and isn't this the third time that they've recommended an indictment, that the police have said we've got?
Yeah, I don't know how. I've lost count.
Yeah, it's been several times, I believe. Okay,
Right.
so what else is going on?
Okay. In Wisconsin, it's very interesting. The Senate now has a bill. There is a development corporation. Generally, the governor has been able to choose who would chair the development corporation. However, basically, they are not. The Wisconsin legislature wrote out something saying that the governor is not going to be allowed to pick the chair. That the legislature will, and of course the legislature is controlled by Republicans, and the governor is a Democrat. So there you have it.
Yeah, yeah. And in Michigan, they're pulling similar games. This is what they did in North Carolina 2 years ago. I think this is going to be the new normal for Republicans. They cannot win elections. The only way that they can hold power is to rig the game. Democrats got more
they're
votes.
rigging it.
Yeah, Democrats got more votes for the state assembly in Wisconsin and for the House of Representatives in Michigan, and yet Republicans control both those bodies. I mean, this is not right.
Well, and actually, not Elizabeth Warren, the senator from Tammy Duckworth, she complained bitterly.
Yeah.
And said it was rigged. I mean, she went completely nuts on them.
Yeah, and she's right.
Okay. Now, also on the EPA, it looks like the Trump administration is going to try and weaken the laws on greenhouse emissions through the EPA. And the EPA, as you know, decides and makes rules about this, and it looks like the Trump administration is going to weaken it. Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, yeah, more deaths from cancer, more global warming, more polluted waterways, more poisoned air, and Donald Trump and the Republicans get more campaign contributions.
Of course, because, you know, it's interesting. I'm in London. I had lunch with somebody who is a Republican, and, she thinks that Trump is the best thing since sliced bread.
Oh, my. That must have been an interesting lunch.
What he's doing in terms of good. And I said, hey, look, the deficit's gone up 17%. Oh, no, it hasn't. I said, you look it up. The deficit has gone up 17%.
Yeah, and so is the debt, or not that much, but yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay, so now also Donald Trump has, as you know, originally he threatened China with the tariffs, then he took it away. Now he's threatening them again, if you can believe it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what this does to the markets tomorrow. They've been closed in the United States today, but I understand the European markets were down today.
Right. Well, it's going to be very interesting. Of course, Donald Trump did shake hands with President Obama when he went to the service for President Bush 41. He sat with the other presidents, and so that was that.
Yeah. Apparently, before he got there, before Trump showed up, all the former presidents and their wives were all chatting with each other, and everybody was smiling and talking. Trump shows up, and everybody just sits stone-faced.
Quiet. That's right.
It just went suddenly silent. It's so weird. Ellen Ratner, Talk Media News. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
Great talking with you. Have a great time in London. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Free Speech TV is in their fund drive right now, their fundraising drive, and so it would be a great time for you to call 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669, and of course you can go to the Free Speech TV website and donate there as well. Please be sure to mention the show. There are a lot of great goodies that Free Speech TV is offering right now as part of the funds drive, and in fact, there's quite a few. But the important thing is to call 877-378-8669. Here's some information on one of the things that you can get. With a $72 contribution, you get the new edition. We spent, Troy Miller and I spent a year and a half going through all the research and updating everything and getting this thing exactly right with all the new climate change information, the last hours of ancient sunlight. That's with a $72 contribution, autographed by the author. Thanks so much for supporting Free Speech TV. There literally, it's about 2% of you, as best we can tell, between 1 and 2%, who every pledge drive or every other pledge drive or maybe every third pledge drive call up and make a contribution. And 98% of you don't, ever. And so I want to start out by saying thank you to that small percentage who do. This is not uncommon. In public radio, it's 4 or 5% of people contribute. We need to get that number up, though. And so there's two things. Number one, if you've never given to Free Speech TV before, if you've never contributed to Free Speech before, or if you haven't in the last year, please call now. Please consider making a contribution. $20 makes a big difference, actually. It doesn't need to be a $1,000 gift or a $5,000 gift. $20. If a lot of people give $20, and there are a lot of people watching right now, then we have a much better chance of keeping this network on the air, keeping this show on the air. It's important stuff. Free Speech TV really needs your help. And supporting Free Speech TV and supporting our program as well is just, it's really important. I don't know how to say it beyond that. This network is doing extraordinary work. Somebody was tweeting about it just this morning. I love Free Speech TV. It's not beholden to any industries, and it's true. There's CNN, MSNBC, other networks. They're afraid of offending their advertisers. They don't want to speak ill of the oil industry or the, fill in the blank, right? And Free Speech TV, we don't want to speak ill of our donors. Well, that's not a problem. I love our donors. So anyway, it's critical that we keep this network going, and we can only do it with your help. The number is 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669. Please call now and make a contribution to keep Free Speech TV going. With a $20 gift, you get a Free Speech TV window sticker. It's 3x8. It's clear with the logo and Free Speech TV, and I'm guessing this is one of those clingy ones rather than one of the sticky ones, but I'm not sure, so you might want to inquire when you call. With the $60 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Tag You're It coffee mug. This is a ceramic mug. It's a real nice, high-quality mug with a picture of me on it and Tag You're It. With a $72 gift, you get the new 2018 edition, the third edition of, I think this is frankly, the most important book I've written. This and Walking Your Blues Away, I think, are probably the two most important books I've written. And it's The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, The Fate of the World and What We Can Do Before It's Too Late. And it's really a story about how our dysfunctional culture has inevitably, it was predictable 10,000 years ago that this kind of a culture organized along these hierarchical, patriarchal, ignore the planet and consumption-based lines. This culture that basically emerged out of the Middle East around somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 years ago, following the agricultural revolution. That culture, which has now spread all over the world, will end up destroying the world if we don't regulate it or control it or understand it or awaken from it. And so really most of the book is about culture, but the specific thing that is the last hours of ancient sunlight, the specific thing that's ancient sunlight is fossil fuels. That's sunlight that was captured hundreds of millions of years ago and, by plants, and then the plant matter was stored in the earth as carbon. Carbon is the storage system for that sunlight. And then when that carbon comes out, we burn that carbon. We burn natural gas, oil, coal, and we liberate that carbon back into the atmosphere. So we updated it. I updated the book over the last year and a half or so to include all the latest information on climate change. So it's a really solid book. That's a $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt and the sticker. With a $240 gift, Louise and I are putting together a personal growth NLP webinar. It'll be a live event that we'll hold on the internet that will only be open to people who are $240 donors at Free Speech TV. That's it. It's the only way to get it. And we're going to be talking about the various ways that you can use neuro-linguistic programming in NLP to improve your communications, to improve the way that you, family, friends, relationships, all these things. It all has to do with how we communicate. With a $360 gift, you get 5 books: The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, The Thom Hartmann Reader, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy by Greg Palast, and Rebooting the American Dream by me. And with a $480 gift, you get all 5 books, plus the t-shirt, plus the sticker, plus the coffee mug. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and I'll buy you a lunch. You can hang out the last hour of the show here and see how we do it. We work electronic magic in a very small space, and it works out pretty well. So those are the premiums, but the important thing is to keep this network going. We have to keep this network going. And your help, your support, is the difference between Free Speech TV literally existing or not existing. Call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Boy, what a day. We had Congressman Pocan on for the first hour taking your calls. Pramila Jayapal was here. Michael Mann was here. It's been a lot going on. I want to talk about, and we've been talking about, we were talking about the climate and the insect apocalypse with Michael Mann. I want to step out, off from that, because I think that the insect apocalypse, the 6th extinction that we are now in the early stages of, which is leading to the destruction of, in many cases, actually civilization. I mean, look at Syria right now. Look at Libya right now. Look at Guatemala right now. But what's at the core of all this stuff, what's underneath all this stuff, is greed, just good old-fashioned greed. And in order to sustain that greed, what we have is people with great wealth, people like Donald Trump, using race to get average working people all worked up. So I want to talk about a couple of different things here. I want to talk about why is it that greed happens, particularly among people who have more money than they know what to do with, and how race is used in this country in that context. And then, how that fits into this whole issue of climate change and all this kind of stuff. So let me just start out, actually, with Peter Sean Brown. Peter Sean Brown is an American. He was born in Philadelphia, 1968. He grew up in New Jersey. Actually, let me back up just a little bit. I don't know if you saw the TV show The Good Wife. There's a spin-off from this. It's called The Good Fight. It's starring many of the same cast, and it's absolutely brilliant. Louise and I, we had to buy the second season on Amazon. It was like $20 for the season, but boy, was it worth it. It's just an amazing season where they're literally taking on Donald Trump and all this kind of stuff. And they've got this investigator working for them. This the storyline is the woman who's the hero or heroine of hero of the story, the protagonist, is working at this law firm that she's a partner of, a majority black law firm. And they have a young man who is an investigator for them, sort of like their in-house private detective. And he goes out and he finds dirt on people. And they are looking into dirt on the Trump administration and people associated with the Trump administration. And all of a sudden, ICE shows up for this guy. And says we're going to deport him to Nigeria. We have evidence he was born in Nigeria. And he's like, no, I was born in Philadelphia in 1968. Or actually in the good fight, he was born someplace else. But he's like, no, I was born here in the United States. And they're like, nope, you were born in Nigeria. And boom, he ends up in jail. Now, that storyline had to have been written, and the ICE guys are just acting like jackbooted thugs, and it was just brilliant. So that episode of The Good Fight had to have been written a year ago or thereabouts, because I think when the season is released, it means that was last year's season. I'm pretty sure. But I'm not sure how it works. Maybe it was, the first half of 2018, and now they're on hiatus or something, but whatever. That was a while ago. This is from this week. The December 4th Washington Post. Peter Sean Brown worked at Fogarty's, a laid-back restaurant in Key West, Florida, known for its Cajun chicken. And he had been tested. He was on probation. And when he went in for his monthly probation check, they tested him and he came back positive for marijuana. So instead of going home, he was going to spend, a couple of weeks in jail. And this is where it gets weird. When he gave his fingerprints to his probation officer, the probation officer sends them to the FBI to verify his criminal record. But they also go to ICE. Now, he had no idea they were going to ICE, and, I wouldn't know that. But the next day, an ICE officer sent the jail a form requesting that Brown be held for removal from the country. Peter Sean Brown didn't even know what ICE was at the time. A young black man living in Florida, born in Philadelphia in 1968, grew up in New Jersey. And ICE was preparing to deport him to Jamaica. They said he was born in Jamaica, a country where he has never lived and he doesn't know anyone. The county that he lives in Florida, it's Monroe County. In January of 2018, of this year, they entered a new arrangement with ICE. It's called Basic Ordering Agreements. And basically what it is that ICE gives them $50 for every person in custody that ICE can snatch. They pay a bounty to the local county sheriff's association, or the local county sheriff. And this, to quote the Washington Post, creates a financial motive for sheriffs to execute every single detainer request they receive, despite countervailing evidence. Now, this guy, Peter Sean Brown, his sister showed up with his birth certificate. I mean, we can, but as the Washington Post writes, he was kept in jail away from his family, friends, and work solely to facilitate his illegal deportation from the United States. The sheriff's office ignored his pleas for weeks, keeping him in jail, mocked him, and led him to believe that he would soon find himself in a Jamaican prison. He suffered severe anxiety, fear, and trauma in the process. By the way, Peter is also gay, and Jamaica is literally one of the 3 worst countries in the world for a gay man to be at. Time magazine branded the Caribbean nation, this is from the Washington Post, Time magazine branded the Caribbean nation the most homophobic place on earth, and Human Rights Watch has warned of, quote, unchecked homophobic violence, warning in a 2014 report that LGBT Jamaicans, quote, are taunted, threatened, fired from their jobs, thrown out of their homes, beaten, stoned, raped, and killed. And so, when this young man is trying to say to the police, please don't let them send me to Jamaica, one of the, just over 3 weeks after he'd first been detained, jail officers woke Brown and told him to pack his bags, according to the complaint. During the transfer procedure to the Chrome Detention Center in Miami, this is turning him over to ICE, right, to be put on a plane and shipped off to Jamaica. He continued to inform staff he was a U.S. citizen. One of the sheriffs put on a Jamaican accent and told him, yeah, whatever, Mon, everything's going to be all right, the complaint alleges. Finally, he was released. His sister and brother were successful in prevailing and convincing ICE that he was a U.S. citizen, but by that point, he'd been in jail for a month. He'd been, this guy's going to have PTSD for the rest of his life, and he lost his job. So here we see how the very, very wealthy plutocrats who run America have decided that using race and using immigration as a stand-in for race is the most powerful political weapon they can wield because they don't have anything else. They're not telling Americans we're going to make your life better. They're not telling Americans we're going to raise your wages. They're not telling Americans we're going to protect your investments. They're not telling, in fact, they're doing the opposite. They're cutting wages. They're cutting the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They're not telling Americans we're going to make your air cleaner. No, they're adding more pollution. They're not telling Americans we're going to make your water safer. No, they're poisoning our water for profit. They're not telling Americans your kids are going to get a better education. No, they're cutting funding for education. They're not telling Americans your college students are going to do better and free. No, they're raising the price constantly. They're not telling Americans your health care is going to be taken care of. Don't worry. Republicans can't say any of those things because they're not doing any of those things. They're doing the opposite of all those things. So all basically they can do is say, look out for that brown person over there. Oh my God. And then that echoes into agencies like ICE that are, basically racist machines to begin with. I mean, it's just, this is what's going on. So I told you I wanted to connect this to great wealth. This is fascinating. Then I'm going to connect it to climate change, and would love to get your thoughts on all this. If you think I'm just totally off base here, or if this is making sense to you. The French government. You've seen these protests in France, right? Well, it wasn't just about the gasoline tax. People in America, particularly the news media, they love to say it's about the gas tax. Mostly what is driving the protests in France is neoliberalism, is Macron's basically kind of, the kind of policies that America lived under from 1981 to today, the kind of policies that the UK lived under, that's Reagan to today, the policies that the UK had from 1978, with Margaret Thatcher to today. And France has imposed these kinds of policies, this austerity. They're cutting back on public benefits. The wages have been stagnant. And Macron, one of the things that he had done that had really pissed people off is he cut the wealth tax. Now, in France, if you're obscenely rich, there's actually a tax that you have to pay on your wealth every year. Every year they look at all the money that they've got. They look at all the money that the rich people have, and they say, okay, give the government, a certain percentage of this. And it used to be on everything you had, your investments, your homes, everything. And this only applied to people who were like fabulously wealthy, right? And you had to have, I don't know what the threshold was, but from everything I've read, it looks like this was, if you didn't have, if you were under 10 or 20 or $50 million in net worth, it didn't really matter that much. But over these levels, then this tax started kicking in. Well, one of the things Macron did is he reduced that tax. He eliminated the wealth tax on investments, saying it was going to stimulate the economy. We've heard this kind of crap before from neoliberals, right? And that's what the people were really upset about. So Macron now is saying, well, maybe we'll undo this. This is from the Financial Times today. Mr. Macron's government reformed the 36-reformed, right? In other words, cut the tax. The 36-year-old levy known as the Impôt sur les grosses fortunes last year so that it covered only property assets and excluded investments, which has caused, but the measure helped to cement criticism by Mr. Macron's opponents that he was, quote, the president of the rich. Benjamin Griveaux, a government spokesman, said on Wednesday that the measure could be modified. But, and then it goes into the Gilets Jaunes movement, the yellow vest movement, has widened to protest failing purchasing power, high taxes, and a feeling that any benefit from reforms is yet to be felt by ordinary people. Sound familiar? Neoliberalism is killing the planet. We'll get back to the killing the planet part and why the super rich are not happy with what they have right after the break. And we'll pick up your calls, too.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It is 18 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Talk media for the sane among us. And welcome back. Randy watching Free Speech TV in Ottawa, Iowa. Hey, Randy, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. I just heard you guys talking about the young man that was taken in falsely arrested.
Yeah.
And what I just saw a deal on YouTube that was similar to that. and it was about drug addicts and moving them into halfway houses in Florida, and milking money from the Affordable Care Act, and even getting addicts once they're recovered to relapse so they can open up their case again. And the thing of it is that the thing that you didn't say was that when you know that there is ICE money trickling down for immigration enforcement through these county and state enforcement agencies that kept that guy in jail.
Yeah, they're paying the sheriffs $50 a pop. I don't know if it's $50 a day or $50. I'm guessing it's $50 a person for everybody that the sheriffs can turn over to ICE. Which is why the sheriff sent this guy's fingerprints to ICE, saying, "Hey, you want him?" And I said, "Oh yeah, sure," because fingerprints. I mean, it's not 100% reliable.
But they're probably billing ICE for the stay in the county jail as well.
Wouldn't surprise me. It doesn't explicitly say that in the Washington Post article, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yep. I'll let you go. I just it's Florida is disturbing in how they do things. The way they count votes and their history with drugs and dark money in that state, and it's just I don't know. It's sad sometimes.
Yeah. Did you ever read any Carl Hyacин's fiction, Randy?
No, I haven't.
Carl Hyacin is brilliant. He was a op-ed writer for the Miami Post for years and years, and he started writing novels. And he's got this, and they all take place in Florida. He lives in Florida, and one of the characters that recurs in many of his novels is the former governor of Florida, who got totally pissed off with the sugar guys and all the billionaires down there that were polluting the Everglades. And he went off to live in the Everglades as a kind of as a swamp creature, and he keeps popping up, and he only has one eye now, and he's got long mangled hair, and he looks like the bizarre homeless guy, and which he is. And he keeps popping up as the hero. Somebody gets in trouble and their car breaks down, and the bad guys, the serial killer's about to kill the person, and the sheriff comes, or the former governor comes staggering out of the swamp with all the stuff hanging off him. But every single one of his novels, they're very, very funny to read. He's a comedy basically writer, but they're also good novels. I mean, good, well-drawn characters and stuff. But in every one, the main sub-story, the belly of the story, the under part of the story, is always about how corrupt Florida's politics are, and how it's been corrupted by big money. And,
amen.
Yeah, it's Hiaasen, I think, Carl Hyacin. And it's just brilliant writing. Yeah, good talking to you, Randy. Thanks a lot for the call. There are a few people out there who are pointing. John D. MacDonald in his Travis McGee novels used to rail on the corruption in Florida too. I think Randy's onto something. So coming back to the break, I'm going to talk about why ultra-rich people aren't satisfied with what they have, and then how this is impacting our climate as well. And we'll be picking up your phone calls right after this, so stick around. Free Speech TV is in their fund drive right now, their fundraising drive, and so it would be a great time for you to call 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669. And of course, you can go to the Free Speech TV website and donate there as well. Please be sure to mention the show. There are a lot of great goodies that Free Speech TV is offering right now as part of the funds drive, and in fact, there's quite a few. But the important thing is to call 877-378-8669. Here's some information on one of the things that you can get. With a $72 contribution, you get the new edition. Troy Miller and I spent a year and a half going through all the research and updating everything and getting this thing exactly right with all the new climate change information, the last hours of ancient sunlight. That's with a $72 contribution. Autographed by the author.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. So We're talking about the ultra-rich now, and how they're. I was talking earlier about how they're maintaining their riches and their political power and their position with basically racism. Turning Americans against each other, and all around the world we see this happening. You see this happening in Hungary. You see this happening, in Poland right now. It's happening. It's happening all over the world. And Joe Pinsker wrote a brilliant piece for The Atlantic. Earlier this month, and it's titled "The Reason Many Ultra-Rich People Aren't Satisfied with Their Wealth." And it's based on a study that was done by Michael Norton, a Harvard Business School professor, who has spent years and years getting to know and closely studying hundreds of people who are worth hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to figure out what motivates them, what drives them. And because, the core question is, why would somebody who has $10 million, $50 million, $100 million, $1,000 million, $1 billion, $20 billion, the Koch brothers, $80 billion, why would somebody with that much money, you can't possibly spend that much money in a lifetime. Even if you want to send a rocket ship to the moon, you can't spend that much money in a lifetime. Why would somebody with that much money work so hard to get more? Particularly when we know that the social impact of money accumulating at the top is a negative impact. It damages people on the bottom, actually. To a certain extent, this is a zero-sum game. And what they found is that all of us humans, basically compare ourselves with others. We ask two questions. Am I doing better than I was before? That's kind of a self-referential comparison. And then the second question, am I doing better than other people? And so what happens is somebody's worth $1 million, and they double or triple their worth. Now they're worth $2 or $3 million. So they move into a nicer house, but the nicer house is in a neighborhood full of people who are worth $5 million because they're aspirational. They're trying to move up. So then they have to have five. So they get $5 million, and then they get $10 million, and now they want to move to a fancier house, so they move into a neighborhood where everybody's worth $100 million. But they're only worth $10 million, right? But they're in the neighborhood, and they're saying, well, now I got to have $100 million. And this just continuously is happening. And now these billionaires are hanging out with each other, comparing, the people worth $100 million, poor Wilbur Ross, he's only worth $700 million, hanging out with people who are worth $4, $5, $6 billion and saying, I want that. So there's that. In fact, it reminded me of a study. I've told this story before on the air, but it's been a while. This was back in the 70s at Michigan State University. There was a study that was reported by WKAR, the local NPR station of MSU Research, that found that squirrels make nests that are a particular size, and you can see them in the winter because the leaves fall. And so they went around and they added 20% more bulk to the squirrel's nests. They added more leaves to make the squirrel, just a couple of squirrels' nests 20% larger. And what they found was within a matter of weeks, all the other squirrels had made their nests larger too. So this is something that's like biological and wired into us. I mean, we can call it greed, we can call it obscene wealth, but there's a piece to it that is human biology and psychology. So frankly, the way to deal with this is through policy, through going back to a top tax rate over 50% on anything over a couple $1 million a year in income.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And like France imposing a wealth tax. We'll get to the climate change part of this right after the break, and we'll pick up your call. Stick around. Thanks so much for supporting Free Speech TV. There literally, it's about 2% of you, as best we can tell, between 1% and 2%, who every pledge drive or every other pledge drive or maybe every third pledge drive call up and make a contribution. And 98% of you don't, ever. And so I want to start out by saying thank you to that small percentage who do. This is not uncommon. In public radio, it's, 4 or 5% of people, contribute. We need to get that number up, though, And so there's two things. Number one, if you've never given to Free Speech TV before, if you've never contributed to Free Speech before, or if you haven't in the last year, please call now. please consider making a contribution. You know, $20 makes a big difference, actually. It doesn't need to be a $1,000 gift or a $5,000 gift. $20. If a lot of people give $20, and there are a lot of people watching right now, then we have a much better chance of keeping this network on the air, keeping this show on the air. It's important stuff. Free Speech TV really needs your help. And, you know, supporting Free Speech TV and supporting our program as well is this is just, it's really important. I don't know how to say it beyond that. This network is doing extraordinary work. Somebody was tweeting about it just this morning. You know, I love Free Speech TV. It's not beholden to any industries. And it's true. There's, you know, CNN, MSNBC, you know, other networks, they're afraid of offending their advertisers. They don't want to speak ill of the oil industry or the, you know, fill in the blank, right? And Free Speech TV, I mean, you know, well, we don't want to speak ill of our donors. Well, that's not a problem. I love our donors. So anyway, it's critical that we keep this network going, and we can only do it with your help. The number is 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669. Please call now and make a contribution to keep Free Speech TV going. With a $20 gift, you get a Free Speech TV window sticker. It's 3x8. It's clear with the logo and Free Speech TV, and I'm guessing this is one of those clingy ones rather than one of the sticky ones, but I'm not sure, so you might want to inquire when you call. With the $60 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Tag You're It coffee mug. This is a ceramic mug. It's a real nice, high-quality mug with a picture of me on it and Tag You're It. With a $72 gift, you get the new 2018 edition, the third edition of I think this is frankly, the most important book I've written. This and Walking Your Blues Away, I think, are probably the two most important books I've written. And it's The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, The Fate of the World and What We Can Do Before It's Too Late. And it's really a story about how our dysfunctional culture has inevitably, you know, I mean, it was predictable 10,000 years ago, that this kind of a culture organized along these hierarchical, patriarchal, ignore the planet and, you know, consumption-based lines, this culture that basically emerged out of the Middle East around somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 years ago, following the agricultural revolution, that culture, which has now spread all over the world, will end up destroying the world if we don't regulate it or control it or understand it or awaken from it. And so really most of the book is about culture, but the specific thing that is the last hours of ancient sunlight, the specific thing that's ancient sunlight is fossil fuels. That's sunlight that was captured hundreds of millions of years ago and, you know, by plants, and then the plant matter was stored in the earth as carbon. Carbon is the storage system for that sunlight. And then when that carbon comes out, we burn that carbon. We burn natural gas, oil, coal, and we liberate that carbon back into the atmosphere. So, so we updated it. I updated the book over the last year and a half or so to include all the latest information on climate change. So it's a really solid book. That's a $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV t-shirt and the sticker. With a $240 gift, Louise and I are putting together a personal growth NLP webinar. It'll be a live event that we'll hold on the internet that will only be open to people who are $240 donors at Free Speech TV. That's it. It's the only way to get it. And we're going to be talking about the various ways that you can use neuro-linguistic programming in NLP to improve your communications, to improve the way that you, you know, family, friends, relationships, all these things. It all has to do with how we communicate. With a $360 gift, you get 5 books: The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, The Thom Hartmann Reader, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy by Greg Palast, and Rebooting the American Dream by me. And with a $480 gift, you get all 5 books, plus the t-shirt, plus the sticker, plus the coffee mug. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and I'll buy you a lunch. You can hang out the last hour of the show here and see how we do it. You know, we work electronic magic in a very small space, and it works out pretty well. So those are the premiums, but the important thing is to keep this network going. We have to keep this network going. And your help, your support is the difference between free speech TV literally existing or not existing. Call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thom Hartmann here with you, and so here we have now, as a consequence of the very, very wealthy seizing control of political power in the United States, specifically the entire Republican Party and a good chunk of the Democratic Party, we are not doing anything about climate change. In fact, the opposite. Emissions are actually up right now over last year. And as a result, life on Earth is starting to die. This from Science Daily, just from a couple days ago. Researchers conducting a 5-year-long study examining snow cover in the northern hardwood region found that projected changes in climate could lead to a 95% reduction of deep insulating snowpack in forest areas across the northeastern United States by the end of the century. The loss of snowpack would likely result in a steep reduction in the forest's ability to store climate-changing carbon dioxide and filter pollutants from the air and water. Why would that be? Because the trees will die. Basically, the snowpack, the winters are really, really cold in the Northeast. Louise and I lived for 5 years in New Hampshire and for 10 years in Vermont. It's cold. It's really cold. And if the tree roots deep down were to get frozen, seriously frozen, it would kill the trees. But because there's, 2-3 feet of snow on the ground, it acts like an insulating blanket and keeps the deep soil from freezing. And it looks like global warming is making a change to this. In global change biology, according to scientists who leveraged 6 decades of data showing declining winter snowpack at Hubbard Brooks Forest, the 7,800-acre research forest in New Hampshire, heavily populated by sugar maple and yellow birch, has been used for over 60 years to study changes in northern hardwood forests, an ecosystem covering 54 million acres and stretching from Minnesota to southeastern Canada. And he says, we know global warming is now causing the winter snowpack to develop later and melt earlier. They found that growth declined by more than 40% in response to snow removal and increased soil freezing. The trees also were unable to rebound even after snowpack removal ceased. So, grim news. Very grim news. Meanwhile, down in Florida, irked by the debate and concerned that the news media wasn't doing enough to cover what she was seeing on the beach, Ms. Gill, this is from the New York Times, they're going to have to find out for themselves when they can't sell their home, is the headline. Ms. Gill, whose father was a producer for CBS News, started shooting videos in her iPhone during her morning walks. This was by the Naples Pier. In the video, Ms. Gill zoomed in on a 6-foot-long, stiff, glistening dolphin carcass, its mouth frozen in a toothy smile. The creature was one of more than 20 dead bottlenose dolphins that had washed up on local beaches in recent days. This is the 7th one in 24 hours, she says through tears in the video. When is this going to stop? The video went viral, thus the New York Times doing a story about her. And they write, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration declared that 42 dolphins had died in the previous 10 days, and a new emergency was breaking out. Seabirds, including sandwich terns and common terns, were dropping out of the sky, dying by the hundreds. She added she had never seen anything like it in the 25 years. This is Joan Fitzgerald, the veterinarian at the Arks Wildlife Hospital and Conservancy of Southwest Florida. She says, I've never seen anything like this in the 25 years that I've been working here. We're hitting an inflection point. We're hitting a hockey stick. We're hitting I don't know what the word is, a tipping point. And it's starting to become really obvious. David in Safety Harbor, Florida. Hey, David, thanks for listening to 88.5. What's up?
Hi, Tom. I was calling to add some points to those who try to acquire more wealth. Just to add to that, from my perspective, I feel that some, not all, but some, try to acquire more wealth, more power, because it's based on an addiction. They keep trying to acquire more, never is it enough, and they'll do so disregarding the effects on others, friends, and like an addiction, opioid person will keep stealing from their friends and family, and harm them, disregarding those effects just because they need more and more. So I feel sometimes wealth and power to some is an addiction.
You're absolutely right, David. And in fact, the article points out, it doesn't get into that neurochemistry part of it, but there have been other articles that have, that it's not so much an opiate addiction because, we have opiate receptors in our bodies that dull pain. It's more of a cocaine addiction. What cocaine does is it jacks up dopamine levels in your body, which is the feel-good hormone. And similarly, in the article, they talked about how these guys, he was doing one research project with hedge fund managers in New York City. And, during the day, they would be, betting on stocks. And when they had a bet that went well, they'd get this incredible rush, this high, this dopamine high. When the bet went poorly, they'd go down. And then, and he also talks about how after the trading day was done, they'd sit around and play competitive poker. They were just junkies to that, they were like gambling addicts, essentially, except that it was legal and they were making hundreds of millions of dollars on it. But I agree with you, and I think that a lot of these people, had they been born, had the Koch brothers not been born with a daddy who, into a family that was already worth an enormous amount of money, had Donald Trump not been born into a family that was already worth a lot of money, they would probably be living in an apartment in one of the suburbs of New York City with newspapers from the floor to ceiling and empty tin cans and all kinds of empty Coke bottles and milk bottles and you'd see them on the Hoarders show on TV. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So,
well, I appreciate it, Tom.
Say what?
I said I appreciate it, Tom.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dave. Spot on. I totally agree with what you're saying here. Scott in Alameda, California. Hey, Scott, what's up?
Hey, this is in regards to the grift of the $50 a head in Florida with the gentleman that was deported to Jamaica.
Yeah, they just the day before he was supposed to be deported, finally his sister convinced ICE that he actually was a U.S. citizen, so he didn't get deported, but he got terrorized for 4 weeks.
Right. This goes to something I've been thinking about a lot lately. That the who, what, when, where, why of journalism is they're not, the journalists aren't finishing that.
Right.
I've got some particular points here with the Magnitsky Act and Putin. Why he wanted to get that down. They're not asking why. The why is because they're stealing the tax receipts from the Russian people. That's what it was with Bill Browder. They stole the tax receipts. With Ivanka Trump, the why of her email situation, she wanted to avoid the Government Records Act because she's doing all this stuff behind, on the side.
Right.
With the beds for the children at the border. Why is it exploding? Because they're getting $700 a bed per night rather than, I think it's around $300 under Obama.
Right, and that's because this is these are private prison corporations that are building these things. They're charging that kind of money, and then they're giving massive kickbacks to the Republicans, in office who are making all this possible. Scott, spot on. I totally agree with you. Joan in Evanston, Illinois. Hey, Joan, what's up?
Hello.
Joan, I can't hear you. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to put you on hold, Joan. I just can't hear you. Daryl in Rolling Bay, Washington. Hey, Daryl, what's up?
Hi, Tom, long-time listener. About 2.5 months ago, you reported the story of a Rastafarian black man from Portland traveling across to go to one of his heroes, like somewhere in Tennessee, deep south, and he was arrested with a vial of the same thing that I take, and it's got 1.5% THC. It has to have that. It's a binder. And he got arrested, and he got convicted by a court down there for 7 years. Is there any way that you have an update on that, Tom? Or can I send him some money for books, cigarettes?
Wow. Yeah. I remember doing that story here on this show, about 5 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago?
Well, 3, I thought, yeah.
Yeah, it might have even been more recent. Typically after I do news stories, I just toss them. I don't have the details, but it shouldn't be hard to find. I mean, that was a story that was, as I recall, in the major press. He did have a fair quantity of pot with him, actually, but it was medical marijuana that he had gotten from. I think he was a resident of either Washington State or Oregon, and he was down in Mississippi, as I recall, or Louisiana, and got busted, and they put him to jail for a good long time. I just don't have it off the top of my head, Daryl, but I'm guessing you can probably find it. Thanks a lot for the call.
But
Go
does
ahead.
that wash? Does marijuana wash? That's illegal. The liquid stuff that I take, which is called whatever, I give it to my dogs, organic hemp oil.
Yeah.
That needs a 2%, 1.5–2% binder to make it work of TCP. So
THC.
Did he have marijuana? Therefore, he committed a crime. But 7 years.
Yeah,
geez.
yeah, he had actual marijuana, and he had
Heisman. Please spell that for me. I want to buy the book. I love your suggestions. How do you spell Carl Heisman?
Oh, Carl, I believe it's Hiaasen, and Carl with a C.
S-A-M?
S-E-N.
S-E-N.
Yeah, it might be S-O-N, but it's Carl Hiaasen. And it's great stuff. Daryl, I got to move along, but thank you for the call and good luck. I hope you enjoy the book. Mark in Hopkins, Minnesota. Hey, Mark, what's up?
Hi,
Shira
yeah,
Joan is on line too, by the way. Pardon me, Mark.
Great, no problem. I just wanted to make a comment. You talked earlier about the snow cover and what it's doing in terms of trees.
Yeah.
Well, I spent a number of years working for a major agricultural company, and I don't think people understand that it's going to have major changes on us as well, because there are a lot of crops that we depend on, like wheat, that depend on that snow cover to protect it from the freeze. And when you don't have that, you're going to have much smaller yields. You're going to have crops that aren't as resistant to insect infestation, so they're going to end up using more pesticides on them. In addition, without that snow cover, what you're going to find is you're going to have less insect die-off. So you're going to have more of those insects, more pesticides getting used. It's going to be a cycle that's just going to impact our food supply and the quality of that food.
Yeah, and you're talking about winter wheat, right? Isn't that what you plant in the fall and then it
That is correct.
Yeah,
that is correct.
Winter wheat. Huh, amazing. Mark, thank you. Thanks for that data point. I appreciate it. Dave in Federal Way, Washington. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Hey, not too much, Tom. I had a climate change question as well. I've seen a couple of studies, and I don't know if they really correlate or not, and I don't know if you put any thought to it. But one is a study that shows that the soil composition, maybe within the next 50 years, will mirror or be similar to that of the last ice age, and it will take up to 200 years for it to return to what we now call normal. And this is, supposedly going to lead to massive food insecurity due to industrial and corporate farming, and they're, unless they change very quickly and adapt to that soil composition. Plus, there's another study saying that median income around the world is going up, which is good news, but also food insecurity is already going up.
Yeah.
Simultaneously.
And it's been going up in the United States since the 90s.
Yeah, but do you think we're in the beginning, starting to see the beginnings of that soil composition analysis?
I don't know. What I know is that, and I write about this in Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight at some length, there's a whole chapter about it, that when America was first settled by Europeans who were keeping records of what we had and where it was and all that kind of stuff, what we found was that the soil in the Midwest was 8 to 10 feet deep. It takes a tree 100 years to make an inch of soil. Trees make soil; they break up the rock with their roots, and soil is filled with organic matter. It was 8 to 10 feet deep. Average topsoil now in the Midwest is 3 inches to a foot, depending on where you go. And what has happened is that agriculture, plowing basically, plow and till agriculture, combined with industrial chemical agriculture, but just plow and till agriculture as a starting point. Exposed a lot of that soil in a way, to the elements in a way that the living things in it couldn't survive. And the soil basically has died. And so it's no longer soil, it's dirt. And so the question is, how long does it take dirt to return to soil? And there's some good news there. There's some amazing stuff that they're doing down in Costa Rica. In fact, Louise and I were down there. We were filming this last year for this climate change documentary, where they're using basically organic farming practices to revitalize soil that has been destroyed. And it works quite well. It's just, it doesn't comport with Monsanto's business model. Dave, thanks a lot for the call. It's great to hear from you. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with your calls here on the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where despair is not an option. And welcome back. Genevieve in Seattle, listening on KBCS. Hey, Genevieve, what's up?
Hello there.
Hi.
I would say yes, despair is not an option, so let's get active. I would just like to point out, it would be great for more arborists and naturalists to call in. Tree roots, by and large, grow sideways, to put it in layman's terms. So one has great control in one's yard or hood to help sustain trees by mulching and watering. Same with the swordfish ferns. Sword.
I think it's just sword ferns. Yeah.
Not swordfish. So the sword ferns are all healthy in my garden because I keep them watered, and so are all of my trees. So when there's good snowpack and our reservoirs aren't running dry, it's a good time to water your trees because they are dying in the Northwest. You can see, if you see dead leaves at the crown of a tree in the summer, it's dead. The rest might be green, but it's going out. So I would just like to say that we got misled by marketing folks into calling air pollution greenhouse gases. And then it's called science, and then it's knocked off as liberal stuff. So I would just think that a return to air pollution, water pollution, and toxins would benefit our discussion.
Yeah, simplify the terms.
Dumb it down. Just, if we're dumb enough to vote Trump in, we must be pretty dumb.
Yeah, we need a digestible.
We got rerouted with these fancy words.
Yeah. Well, the good news, Genevieve, is that we did not actually vote Trump in. He lost by 3 million votes. It's just it was the quirk of the Electoral College. But I'm curious. We're having over 80% of Oregon right now is in drought conditions.
I understand that. Yeah.
I'm wondering how it is in Washington State, and I'm wondering if that might be what's killing the ferns.
I do think so, and that's why I say that my ferns are fine. They're watered by me.
Right.
And so I do think that our park systems, they water the grass like it's going out of style, and they fail to water the trees, and we should just reroute our mentality. The insects actually will be less aggressive on our crops if they can hang out in our trees and shrubs and hedgerows. So we just need to maintain our natural understories, which is the ferns and other things that grow all year long. And the trees are, integral in their root system, and the mycorrhizae connect them all. And just trying to water the surface, as deep as you can. But you can help a tree. Mainly, please, people, remove the grass from around the roots of the trees because it is taking the water from your tree and aiding the demise.
They're competing? I assumed that the grass would hold the soil and hold the moisture in the soil.
No. No, mulch, leaves, ferns,
which is what you naturally see in a forest around trees. You see the mulch.
You see no grass.
Right. You don't see grass. You see mulch.
You see lots of pine needles, and that's soft and spongy and delicious actual soil with worms in it.
Yep.
So bring your compost out, put it in, and feed the worms.
There you go. And Paul Stamets has done amazing stuff on mycorrhiza, by the way. It's absolutely extraordinary stuff.
Yeah. So
Genevieve,
YouTube Paul Stamets.
Yeah, there you go. Genevieve, thanks for the call, and thanks for listening to KBCS. It's great talking with you. We'll be right back. It's coming up on, 7 minutes before the hour. Stick around. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Joan in Evanston, Illinois. Hey, let's try it again, Joan. You're on the air. Joan? Oh, this is not good. Okay, I'm going to put Joan on hold. Joan is on line 2, Sheriff, if you want to check this out. One other thing I wanted to share with you here before we wrap up the show. The Political Economy Research Institute, this is a new think tank, and they just released a paper titled "How Do We Pay for It?" And it was, in the context of Medicare for All. And what they found is that if we went to a Medicare for All system in the United States, if we did that today, over the next 10 years, we would save $5.1 trillion. So the question, seriously, so $5.1 trillion. So the question shouldn't be, how do we pay for Medicare for All? But how do we pay for the current system that we have that's costing us an extra $5.1 trillion every decade? That's $500 billion a year that we're just, handing off to the health insurance billionaires and multimillionaires so that they can buy another mansion someplace in Switzerland. In fact, there have been a number of great documentaries over the years that chronicle the home. It's like homes of the rich and famous, only they're all the executives, the chief executives and the senior executives of companies like Aetna and United Healthcare and Blue Cross and whatnot. And they've got a multi-million-dollar mansion in Malibu, and they've got a multi-million-dollar mansion on the coast of Australia, and they've got a multi-million-dollar mansion on the coast of southern France, and on and on. So it's like, how can we afford not to do something about this? Marie in Cortland, New York. Hey, Marie, what's on your mind today?
So happy to get to talk with you, and I'll try to be quick. We've been talking about building soil, and we've been talking about, you haven't really talked about it today, but about blue carbon and replanting trees and how important those things are for combating climate change. But one thing that troubles me, and maybe I'm just ignorant about this, but I have not seen any of that mentioned in the Green New Deal. And it seems like we ought to at least be talking about public works programs to reforest areas and to clean up and restore coastal and freshwater wetlands for the blue carbon. Can you say anything about that?
I absolutely agree with you, Marie, and I think that that's a great idea. And this is, Franklin Roosevelt's idea was you don't give people welfare, you give them a job. That there is a certain level of dignity and quality of life and sense of purpose that's associated with having employment. And so, that's why he started the WPA. And the WPA was in response to an environmental crisis, the Dust Bowl.
Exactly.
And the Dust Bowl was the consequence of bad agricultural practices and stripping out all the trees from much of the southern Midwest. And so what they did is they went through and planted trees around all the farms. And now those trees are in the neighborhood of 100 years old, and they're large, and they look like they've been there forever. But those were planted in the 30s by these guys who were over 1 million people, as I recall. I think it was mostly men at the time. More than 1 million people who were out there planting trees. So yeah, spot on, Marie. We need a new WPA and make it part of the new Green Deal. It's a great suggestion. I'll bring it up with any Democratic politician I get on the next time I can. Marie, thanks for the suggestion. It's great to hear from you. We won't be back today. We'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, a lot going on in the world here that we need to be keeping track of. We need to be up on. We need to know how to talk back to the voices of great wealth and pollution who want to despoil our planet for profit. And that's my mission, is to share that information with you. I hope it's useful. So get out there, get active, tag You're It. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke.
Bye.